When I'm driving an F1 car, steering wheel feedback is one of the most important things. It helps me decide when to brake and how hard. It's how I feel the surface of the road. Every bump in the terrain, every wheel slip. If my tyres are starting to lose grip, I can sense that immediately. When I'm driving in a sim, I need that same tactility, that level of detail I have in a real car.
Racing games have come a long way in the last 20 years. Nothing's really changed in how we approach force feedback in all that time. Cutting-edge sims are now so realistic, drivers across all disciplines are using them for training. Our main goal when designing TrueForce was to improve the number of sensations that you actually feel, to put you better in contact with the car that you're driving so that you can improve your performance and that enjoyment of driving on a track. The physical feedback needs to be more immediate or accurate, or a player loses immersion or control.
Game developers are still having to recreate their force feedback from a set library of effects instead of deriving it from real-time modelling.
TrueForce is special because it levels the playing field for PC and console gamers. You're now getting the extra level of precision and detail that you need, regardless of which platform is your choice. This is not just iteration, it's total evolution. TrueForce force feedback works differently. It hooks directly into the physics engine of the game. Games already calculate the forces on the tyres and the steering wheel. The TrueForce algorithm is able to process this data at up to 4,000 times a second. It will even use the game's audio engine and pass it directly on to the driver.
We spend a lot of time as audio designers trying to make each car sound unique and as realistic as we possibly can. Being able to integrate the audio into the force feedback is something that we've wanted to do for a long time, and TrueForce enables us to do that. And the ability to send the audio to the wheel, to have it respond and vibrate with the loss of traction, really increases my ability to give that immersion to the player.
You can sense the changing surface of the road. You'll be able to feel if the back end of the car is losing grip.
The first time we had it running in the build, you could feel the wheel humming and vibrating as we revved the engine. Our immediate reaction was it really adds another level of immersion.
The first thing you're going to feel with a TrueForce wheel is the engine note. The minute the engine starts in the game, you will know exactly which car you are driving. TrueForce is the beginning of something new. This is now the foundation for all wheels that we'll produce in the future. This extra level of information gives everyone all the information they need to learn how to control their car better. TrueForce benefits any racing fan looking for a more realistic driving experience.
Because winning is all about feeling.
It's motorsport, but not as you know it. Test yourself and your everyday road car. Safe, affordable, but most of all, fun. And all you need is your daily driver. Experience the thrill of a sprint day. Race against the clock at a hill climb. Or test your reflexes with an auto test. It takes just 3 simple steps to get started. Get on the start line. Search Motorsport Australia Daily Driver today.
one mistake. Just one mistake, and it can all slip away. After round 1, the series leader Madison Down went into round 2 at Phillip Island as the hot favourite. In the blink of an eye though, it all went wrong. The chasing pack made the most of Madison's unforced error and cashed their chips in. Jake Burton and the defending champ Jared Filsell each opened up their win column to help them rise up the rankings. Tonight though, we head to Belgium, here at Spa-Francorchamps. 39 laps of action, 39 laps of drama, 39 laps of the best racing you will witness as the best 44 drivers in the country go toe-to-toe on one of the most iconic tracks in the world today. Welcome to round 3 of the Motorsport Australia Logitech G Pro Invitational Cup. As expected, it's a chilly afternoon here in Belgium, and despite there being some of the best hot chocolate in the world, I still can't seem to get warm. I'll be heading back indoors soon, so in the meantime, to cool the action is Lockie Mansell and Stephen Sandman Clark. Gents, despite the cold temperature, I reckon we're in for some hot action. What are your thoughts for round 3?
Hope you're enjoying some hot, Lindt Belgian chocolate, Cass. Thank you to you, and a very good evening to Steve Sandman Clark. I'm Lockie Mansell, back in the commentary box for round number 3 of the Logitech G Pro Invitational Series. And, well, as Cass so thoroughly described for us off the top, Madison Down, winner of round number 1, came into the second round at Phillip Island as the hot favourite, ran off the road in the last corner in race number 1, fell outside the top 10, and in the end that was enough to see him drop from first in the standings all the way down to 6th as we head to round number 3 here at Spa.
Good evening, Lockie. It was certainly an interesting, wasn't it? I couldn't believe my eyes watching that broadcast of Phillip Island. Unfortunately missed it due to technical issues, but man, to see Madison Down make a little whoopsie like that, it really cost him, and it's really taken a change into the points, like you said. So certainly a little bit of a curveball, not what we expected, but it certainly mixed things up, and mate, what a great place to visit for Spa for these cars. This is going to be a great race, I think, and we've got 2 races tonight, so it should be an absolute ripper.
It's a circuit with a high average speed, and it's a circuit that has a couple of the most iconic corners of any racetrack anywhere in the world. Obviously, you've got the La Source hairpin, which no doubt will be the scene of some action at the start, but you've also got the high-speed undulating section at Eau Rouge, which then leads you onto the Kemmel Straight, where we'll see these cars reaching a very, very high top speed. Qualifying is underway, and it's just a single 15-minute session that will be used to determine the grid positions for tonight's single race, which will feature 2 compulsory pit stops. So after the twin race format that we had at Phillip Island, we're back to just the single race tonight. Like I said, 2 compulsory pit stops, and this circuit, it's one where tyre degradation is quite high, so tyre management will be one of the factors this evening.
Interesting, isn't it, for these guys? They're all obviously now in qualifying mode. They're making the most of what draft they can get, because we talk about how fast this racetrack and how long some of the straights are. It's a real advantage to be tucked up behind someone to get that draft, because that can really help you on the timesheets. We've already seen how close it is in practice, so now in qualifying, this is when they really need to make it happen, and very only a short qualifying too, where we've normally seen longer ones. It's about 15 minutes tonight, so the guys know that they've got to have their hot lap, head back in, and then put on a new set of tyres and go again.
Not going to have a lot of time for a whole lot of runs in this session either. It is such a long racetrack, 7 kilometres the distance, so it's one of the longest circuits, I think, that we'll visit this year for the Logitech G Pro Invitational A Series, and lap times are around the 2 minute 16 mark. So you really have to be efficient at getting out onto the circuit, getting your hot lap in, getting back to the pits. Obviously, with the no escape rule in force, you can't just escape back to the pits after you've completed your hot lap. You do have to do a cool down lap to get back to the pits, to get another set of fresh tyres, and then go again. Let's have a look at the point standings coming into this round, Sandman. And after picking up a race victory at Phillip Island, Jake Burton has moved into the series lead on 348 points, ahead of James Scott on 340 points. Dylan Rudd, he's been a bit of a quiet achiever in the first couple of rounds. He finished on the podium at Phillip Island. That has moved him up to equal third in the standings with Andrew Gilliam. They're each on 333 points. and then equal fifth in the standings with 324 points, Brady Myers and Madison Down. The top 10 in the points is rounded out by Rick Kuznetsov on 319, Ethan Grigault on 304, Brenton Hobson on 302, and then Jake Maloney in 10th position on 297 points.
A good mix-up, isn't it? When you go through that top 10 and peel off some of those names exactly like you did, it's really good. I mean, you know, there's probably a couple of names that people didn't expect so early on in the series, but that's what's good about this. You know, we've got such good racing. There's sometimes a little bit of drama that mixes things up, but I just love going through those names. And when you see our championship leader, Burton, at the moment, he's found himself back at, well, I guess you call it back at home. He's gone back to TTR, and it looks like he's found his feet. He's got really good form at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see how he carries on for today for Spa.
He had really good pace at Phillip Island, particularly in the first race where he picked up that win. Things didn't quite go so well for him in race 2. He had a bad start and then he got penalised for an incident with another driver, but still scored enough points out of the weekend to move to the top of the standings. You talked about a few drivers being in the top 10 that perhaps we wouldn't have expected. Well, equally, there's a couple of drivers outside the top 10 that we would have expected to be a lot higher up. So Jared Filsell, despite the fact that he got a race win at Phillip Island, still all the way down in 24th position. The 0 points haul that he got in round 1 at Sebring was really painful for him. And the other one, who's buried way back in 41st position in the standings, is Josh Anderson. We know that he's a fast sim racer, but he's had absolutely no luck in the first 2 rounds, and he really needs to get a solid bundle of points out of tonight's race to kickstart his title campaign.
Just look at Sebastian Flock just onto the grass there. I don't know if he had a moment, if he was just getting out of the way. He's got to be careful because he obviously, we talk about, you can't escape back to the pits, but it looks like he's got going again. It's probably tricky in some parts of the racetrack. It looks like he's doing his best just to get out of the way, I think, and that's probably good heads-up driving. You don't want to impede anyone else, but the stewards don't look on it very nicely either, so he's just been very smart about that. He knows the turn in there's there on the apex, and he's just headed for the grass, so good move there by Flock.
Yeah, great sportsmanship there, going completely off the racetrack to make sure that he didn't get in the way of anyone. So we have got 7 minutes and 50 seconds or thereabouts remaining in this qualifying session, and at the moment it's James Scott who's fastest, 2 minutes 16.6, his best time of the session so far. Jared Filsell sitting in position number 2. Then we go back to Dylan Rudd, Ethan Grigault, Dylan O'Shea, Brady Myers, Rick Kuznetsov, Richard Hampstead, Josh Anderson and Job Stewart rounding out the top 10. Just noticed that a couple of the big players, Madison Down and Andrew Gilliam, yet to get representative times on the board, Sandman.
Yeah, that's pressure, isn't it? Because, you know, you look at the time of the guys have done 1 lap so far and we're already halfway through the session. So they know they really need to make this one count because they're going to run out of time. Yes, you might be able to put another lap in and bank one, but you're going to use the goodness out of those tyres. So that's where he's going to struggle. So I think he wants to find himself a little bit of clear air. Fingers crossed we don't get the same situation that we had at Phillip Island where some of the drivers were impeded on their, you know, on their fast laps when some of the drivers were on their slow laps. So hopefully for those guys that are down the pack a little bit, that doesn't play out like that.
We saw it with Josh Muggleton at Phillip Island, didn't we, where he was a bit out of sequence with all of the other drivers when it came to his qualifying strategy, and he ended up in a situation where he was on a hot lap while the rest of the field were all warming up, cycling their tyres up, and he came across a big bunch of slow-moving traffic in a particularly awkward position on the racetrack, just coming down through Lukey Heights and into MG Corner, and ultimately it ruined his lap.
Yeah, I think the teams probably have to have a little bit more heads up about that. You know, I mean, it happens in real world motorsport too, but a lot of these drivers and teams, they do have someone in their ear, you know, looking out for them as a crew chief or a car chief or just someone that looks after the team. So I think it'd be good for our sport where if they just had someone in the air, just letting them know that, hey, you have got a fast car, get out of the way. It's really not fair, and hopefully we don't see too much more of it.
Here at Spa, it's possibly not quite so bad because it is a longer track, so there's a bit more space for the drivers and teams to spread themselves out around the circuit. I spoke too soon. Look at the congestion on the run up towards the end of the Kemmel Straight into Le Combe, turns 7, 8 and 9.
Yeah, this is a worry. I mean, look, you know, the teams really need to be on top of this. I think from a team's point of view, they really need to be in the driver's ear to say, hey, you know, you've got fast cars coming. The best thing they need to do is just get out of the way. And if they don't, I think the stewards really should look at it, because you don't want to impede, especially in these shorter sessions. Different story when it's a little bit longer. If you've got half an hour or something, that it's never good. But in these shorter sessions, it's crucial to get these laps to make them count.
So Thomas Freeman there on a hot lap, and he came across some slow-moving traffic. Thankfully, all of those drivers stayed to the right-hand side of the road to stay out of his way, and I don't think his lap was affected too much there. So thankfully, Thomas Freeman able to continue on. He's another driver who has yet to get a time on the board in this session. Jake Burton hasn't recorded a lap time either, so a bit of pressure on some of the main players as Thomas Freeman's going to get balked here. Oh, this is bad. Oh,
it's not on. It's not on. These guys should know better than that. I really don't like that. That's yeah, that's tricky.
Once again, that could have been a pretty nasty accident there. Fortunately, I think the drivers realised that Thomas Freeman was coming up and they managed to somewhat get out of the way, but I still reckon that coming out of turn 15 and 16, he was balked slightly. Because that's the other thing as well, Sandman, is that you want clear track, but like you said as well, you want to try and get yourself the advantage of the slipstream. So in that respect, you do actually want to be around other cars so that you can pick up the draft.
Absolutely, but like you said, even we spoke about just how long this circuit is, yet we're still having these dramas. I mean, I know most of these cars that we can see in shot, they haven't started their lap, so, oh, geez, it was close. But, yeah, I think everyone just needs to be just a little bit more mindful that if these guys are on hot laps behind them, they need to give them plenty of room.
So here we go, big conga line of cars, all about to start their final qualifying lap all at once, and there's going to be some serious pressure on in the closing stages of this session, because still Jake Burton yet to set a lap time. Brenton Hobson, Adam Briggs, some big names there that he gets to punch out lap times. Andrew Gilliam's just come out of the pit, so he's going to have to do an out lap and a warm-up lap, and he's going to need to do it quick smart because there's only 3 minutes remaining on the clock. Madison Down incidentally managed to move up into 7th position with his banker lap. So Madison Down has managed to get himself out of jail and up inside the top 10.
And how crucial is that, just to get a banker lap in? You know, we touched on that Madison left it a little bit late, but it's key to get that banker in because you just don't know how the rest of the session is going to play out. So thankfully, you know, it's not too bad. You're still inside the top 10, and ideally you'd want to be a little bit higher, but he can work from that. That's not the end of the world, and there's still a couple of minutes to go, but I don't know if he's got enough time to put on tyres and head out again.
So James Scott and Jared Filsell both out pretty much line astern at the moment. The two Synergy Sim Racing teammates, there they are. Currently both sharing the front row of the grid on provisional times. Dylan Rudd sitting in position 3 at the moment. He's been very impressive, Dylan Rudd, the first couple of rounds of the season. We saw that he was fast at Phillip Island in the previous round, and probably the most impressive thing for mine is that he's stayed out of trouble as well. So whereas some of the other contenders have been caught in drama and incidents at both Sebring and Phillip Island, Dylan Rudd has managed to stay out of trouble, although as I say that, he has made a mistake and blown that lap.
I don't know if he may have seen some fast cars coming and got out of the way, but nevertheless, exactly. Yeah, he had a great run at Phillip Island and good momentum off the back of that now to head into Spa, and for him to be sort of inside that top 3, that's terrific. But look at this. Now we've got Scott Filsell. What's going to transpire here? Because Filsell had a nice little draft. Is he able to close that? Yep, he did. He actually jumped to the front, so he's grabbed pole position.
He has by 0.04 of a second. The times are going to chop and change as this session continues. Marcello Rivera moves up into position 3 with a 2 minute 16.8 that time around. Dylan O'Shea up into 4th position, and Jake Burton gets a time on the board, which is good enough for P5. So our championship leader is in the game.
Yeah, that's good to see. We can see some cars positioning themselves, getting ready to make a run too, because yes, okay, the checkered flag comes out at the 15-minute mark, but as long as these guys start their lap, then they're right to finish it. So it looks like they've probably got a new set of boots. They're all teeing themselves up in a decent position, a little bit of a train, and they'll get on with it to bank in their final lap.
Brady Myers is among that group of cars, one of our other title contenders for the Trans-Tasman racing team. He's going to be well placed to pick up a nice slipstream from a couple of cars that are ahead of him as well.
Nice to have a few teammates around you too when you're at this point of the qualifying session too. They're all sort of capitalising on the draft. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4 TETR cars there, and of course everyone else is there trying to tag on the end of the train to see if they can make the most of it. The checkered flag's out now for this session, but like I said, these guys, it looks like they're just helping each other with the tow. They now can finish this lap, and hopefully they've got something to take up to Jared Filso in pole position. So at the moment, Jared's now just keeping an eye on the times to see if anyone knocks him off.
There's no doubt that that would have been orchestrated by the TTR boys there. They would have been in communication with each other, and they would have come up with a plan as to how they could maximise the slipstream for one another on the Kemmel Straight. We'll find out a bit later on in the lap if that strategy has worked for them. A few other drivers on pretty fast laps as well.
It's heart and mouth stuff here, isn't it? You're just trying to capitalise on that draft. Brake as late as you can. Look how close he gets to the back. Nice under brakes there for O'Shea. He's going to abort that one straight to the pit lane. Stenberg, is he going to be able to improve? He's in 27th position. Doesn't look like he was able to, unfortunately. So a little bit further back than he would have enjoyed. Looks like everyone else is just darting back to pit lane. So it looks like, I don't want to jinx it, but Filsell may be our pole sitter for round number 3.
Yeah, a lot of the other drivers have aborted their laps. As we were saying, it's the tyres are really only at their peak performance for one lap, particularly on a track as long as this one. So most drivers, if they've already completed their single flying lap on a set of tyres, they'll choose to come back into the pits at the end of the session. This is Tom Freer, who's currently a bit further down the order, sitting in position 29 on the timesheets to be precise. Andrew Gilliam's not recorded a time. So, there we go. He's just moved up. Just as I say that, he has moved up into the top 10. So Andrew Gilliam gets himself up to 10th in the dying stages of the session.
Well, Myers jumped up there. Greg Galt, so Myers 3rd. Greg Galt's jumped into 4th. So see Josh Anderson, he's jumped into 6th position. This has pushed Madison down outside of the top 10 now, back to P12.
Indeed it has. And Madison Down's session's done, so he's not going to be able to improve. So Madison Down back in 12th position. And I just get the feeling, Sandman, that qualifying session didn't quite work out as Madison Down would have been planning it, because we saw that he was very late to get a time on the board, and he really only got one flying lap in during that session. So I reckon that it was a bit of a messy session there for Madison Down. He's going to have some work to do during the race.
Absolutely. It's not ideal, but that's the pressure that these guys are under in these shortened qualifying sessions. And because of the length of the track, like we said, there's only really probably 2 opportunities where they get hot laps. By the time they get back, put on a new set of tyres and have another go. It doesn't take much for your night to get ruined on your first lap, and then it's a quick dart back to the lane just to hopefully salvage something from it. So, yeah, it's not ideal, but he's not finding himself back in 20th or 30th, so he knows he can work with that.
So let's have a look at your grid positions then, and it's the 2 Synergy Sim Racing teammates of Jared Filsell and James Scott sharing the front row. Brady Myers out of position 3 with Ethan Grigold alongside him on row 2. Marcello Rivera out of 5th position, back to Josh Anderson, desperately needs a good round here at Spa tonight. Dylan O'Shea in 7th. Our championship leader Jake Burton is in 8th spot. Dylan Runn and Andrew Gilliam rounding out the top 10, and then it's Luke Rosella and Madison Down occupying positions 11 and 12.
Rick is next off back in 13th, Richard Hampstead 14th, got Brenton Hobson back in 15th, Wayne Burke in 16th, Job Stewart 17th, Jake Maloney in 18th. We've got Brady Bradley Ratu in 19th and Jack Boyd rounding out your 20. These guys are really going to have to be careful of turn one. It's always hold your breath stuff, isn't it, when you start this lap into turn one and then up through that fast section of the racetrack. I mean, it's really nerve-wracking at the best of times, but when it's a race start and you've got 20, 30, 40 of your closest mates around you, it's really a little nerve-wracking.
Also, just hearing that Josh Muggleton will start this race at the back of the grid. That's a penalty for an incident in qualifying from the previous round at Phillip Island. So Josh Muggleton to start tonight's race at the rear of the field. So here we go. Round number 3 of the Logitech G Pro Invitational E-Series at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit in Belgium. 39 laps the distance, 2 compulsory pit stops to be completed by each car in the field, in which they'll take on both tyres and fuel. So far this year, we've had 3 different race winners from the 3 races: Madison Down, Jared Filsell and Jake Burton. Who will prevail tonight? We'll find out the answer to that question in 39 laps time. But it's the 2 Synergy Sim Racing teammates who will battle it out on the run down into turn number 1, the La Source hairpin. It's a tight right-hander which leads you into the downhill section heading into Eau Rouge, and then you can expect slipstreaming aplenty all the way up the Kemmel Straight and into Lacombe. So plenty of action spots to watch on the opening lap. Great to have your company wherever you're tuning in. This is round number 3 of the Logitech G Pro Invitational E-Series. Beautiful start from Jared Filsell from pole position. Not such a good start for his teammate James Scott, who's going to get bundled back to 3rd or even possibly 4th by the time they exit turn number 1.
Well, everyone did a great job. We saw some of the cars, they were 3 and 4 wide heading into that hairpin. So really great job. Everyone's got through there nice and clean. They realise what the job is at hand. They know it's a long race. There's no way you don't want to throw it away in these first couple of corners.
And it's 4th position for James Scott, so he's lost places to both Brady Myers and Ethan Grigault. Now here comes the power of the slipstream into effect, side by side on the run into Lacombe and down the inside. A change for the lead here as Brady Myers goes through on Jared Filsell. Nice textbook move down the inside for Myers.
That draft was special, wasn't it? You could see, like, Filsell was leading there, but then he just got swamped. You could see the cars making up the most of that. Really good driving, and we see Myers jumping into 1st, Filsell 2nd, Grigault in 3rd.
You almost don't want to be leading on the opening lap while the field is so tightly bunched together because of the sheer power of that slipstream, and Brady Myers was able to use it to full effect there. Nice start too from Ethan Grigault, who now gets himself up into the top 3. Scott Rivera, Anderson, O'Shea, Burton, Rudd and Rosella, your top 10 at this stage.
Tell you what, the mood's changing a little bit for Spa. I felt like it was a little bit of elbows out racing at Phillip Island, but it looks like everyone's here just settling themselves down for that first lap. They know it's a long race. I mean, I was really surprised about some of the racing that we had. It was really hard, really fast racing at Phillip Island, but everyone knows the job at hand and they know they can't afford to throw it away. We've seen that drivers who make a mistake in some of these races, especially early on in the championship, it really hurts their points because everyone is so closely bunched together.
We talked about the trouble spots to watch out for on the opening lap. There's still one more to go, and that will be turns 19 and 20, the final chicane that leads you back onto the main straight. And now it's Jared Filsell who has the advantage of the slipstream as they get into the braking zone for turn number 19. He's not quite close enough to send it down the inside, but there are some moves happening a little bit further back just on the fringe of the top 10. That's Dylan O'Shea going side by side with Jake Burton in one of the TTR cars, and they will continue their drag race down the main straight.
It's going to be interesting to see what Filsell does here, because obviously he's going to have that draft and that tow from Myers. Does he decide just to stay in behind? Absolutely not. Look at him. He's already going to get the job done before. This is going to be heart and mouth stuff. It's side by side through there. Someone needs to give. Filsell just tucks in behind. Smart heads up racing there. You don't want to go side by side through there. He's got good pace. I think he's going to try and make the most of it and get the move done on Myers coming into the next turn.
Almost a bit of bump drafting as they exit Eau Rouge and head up the Kemmel Straight once again. He pulls to the inside, Jared Filsell, and he's going to look to do to Brady Myers. But Myers hits him on the previous lap, and there's contact. Myers gets speared off the road there. Filsell through to the lead, and Myers is going to drop a bundle of spots out of that one. The interesting is to pick up the replay and adjudicate on who did what to who there. But just as we've been talking, Sam, out about these drivers racing cleanly, well, that theory's been blown out of the water at the start of lap 2.
Yeah, we're going to have to look at that replay. I'm not sure if Phil Sell was quite alongside. I'm not sure. We'll wait till we see the replay. But, man, that's the last thing he needed. And I think by the looks of it, he got a slowdown penalty just to add insult to injury too. So, unfortunately, he slipped a long way back, but that's cost him the lead.
It's cost him massively. He's been bundled all the way back to 21st position, Brady Myers. Let's have a look at the replay. Thanks to Logitech G. Phil Sell down the inside.
Oh,
I reckon he was far enough up,
yeah.
you know?
Yep.
I reckon he was well down the inside, and I reckon that was the case of Brady Myers needing to give Phil Sell a bit more racing room there.
Yeah, a little bit of give and take, especially so early on. I was touching on that, thinking that everyone was doing such a great job, but yeah, quite possibly he just needed to leave that space there. Jared did have enough of a car along inside there, so, I mean, the stewards will have a look at it, but I don't know that Phil Sell will have too much to answer for that one.
So Phil Sell back to the race lead. Ethan Drigault has capitalised on the demise of Brady Myers to move up into second position ahead of James Scott, recovering from that poor start from the outside of the front row where his car just chug-lugged away from the line while everybody else charged to turn number 1. But James Scott back inside the top 3. And he's got plenty of time to redeem himself for that poor start. Josh Anderson in position 4 at the moment. Marcello Rivera having a good weekend, and they're 3 wide of contact into the hairpin. Madison Down was involved in that. He was on the inside, and Richard Hampstead, his TTR teammate, gets spun around.
Yeah, that was tricky. Hampstead was on the outside. Probably didn't realise that they were 3 wide there, and they may have made contact. So, yeah, I mean, thankfully Hampstead managed to gather it up. He did lose a couple of positions out of it, but thankfully he didn't go backwards because that would have been a nightmare for him.
He actually didn't lose out too badly from that. Fell back to 16th position, Richard Hampstead, and here we go. This is battling it out. Ethan Grigault and James Scott, the contest for second position. Josh Anderson starting to get involved in this one as well. And what that is allowing is for Jared Phil Sell just to start skipping away a bit in the race lead.
Yeah, I think these guys can afford to do a little bit of racing like this because, yes, Jared will get out a little bit, but this draft is so strong. If they can just make it smart through the next couple of corners, just tag on the back of him, they'll pull that gap back quite easily. But good to see a little bit of racing here. Probably a little bit earlier than we all expected, being only lap 3. But what they need to do is just stay in touch with Phil Sell, not let him get away, and they can really stay strong and make this pack probably pull away from the rest of the field.
So, 2 compulsory pit stops. The race is 39 laps long, so you'd have to say that the logical strategy would be to pit on laps 13 and 26 and split the race up into 3 equal segments, but you might see some teams varying their strategy depending on where they are in the field. Some drivers and teams might opt for an early strategy to try and get themselves some clear track, and alternatively there might be some who choose to run a bit longer, but I think there's still quite a few laps to go before we start to see the pit strategy playing out. So right now, enjoy the door-to-door racing action. The slipstreaming and the passing manoeuvres are plenty that we're watching.
That's one of the special things about Spa, isn't it? You know, because they've got these long straightaways and these cars really do enjoy the draft. They suck up nicely to the back of these cars. So they know that the racing is going to be close. And what they need to do here is just sort of stay light astern and just be in touch with Phil Sell. He's got very good pace. Most of the guys throughout the rest of the field there, they know that they just want to stay in touch. And it looks like they're just going to stay light astern, make themselves just be there or thereabouts because there's still so much to play out in this race.
Oh, we've got another car spinning at the Source hairpin. So the Source hairpin, well, on lap number 1, I expected that it might be the scene of a bit of chaos. Everybody was actually pretty well behaved on the first lap. Subsequent laps, not so much.
I didn't quite see what happened there. It is a tough braking zone too because, you know, you're carrying a fair bit of speed in there. And like we said at the start, we were seeing 3 and 4 wide there sometimes. So, and you can see a little bit of damage to some of the cars a little bit further through the field too. So not ideal in the early stages or nice and close here. But that's what they need to do is just try and keep these cars clean, especially the nose of these because it's so aero sensitive around here at Spa.
And so this is Kenneth Latter battling it out with young Rehan Lenoge, the youngest competitor in the field, who Actually showed some pretty impressive pace in the opening couple of rounds. Didn't qualify quite so well tonight as what he did at Sebring and Phillip Island, but good to see that he's learning and continuing to improve, and at the moment engaged in a good battle with Kenneth Latter.
Yeah, he was really in the... Oh, there's a car just a little bit wide there. Rejoins nicely. He was really in the thick of it at Phillip Island. So good to see the pace of that young man. And, you know, he's going to be a star of the future, I reckon. And when he was taking it to everyone there, unfortunately got in a little bit of drama and got turned around at one of the points of the race. And that sort of made his night all that little bit more difficult. But to see him qualify up the front and run with these guys, that was pretty impressive.
Watching the onboard shot with young Rehan as he tucks up onto the back of Kenneth Latter coming out of turn number 16. This is another section where you can get a really good slipstream heading into Blanchimont, which is the high-speed left-handers through turns 17 and 18 before you start to think about braking for the final chicane that turns number 19 and 20. And Lenage down the inside of Kenneth Latter. He came from a fair way back there. Can he get it stopped? Yes, he can, but now he's going to be on the wrong side of the road. For the final left-hander. Latter, though, loses traction, and Leonage should be able to out-drag him down the straight. Indeed, he does. So nice job there. Leonage doing the switchback, forcing Latter to make a mistake on the exit of the final corner, and he picks up a position.
That was very cool. He was confident under brakes too, but yeah, just that little mistake, and he managed to get that position. That was very well done.
He went really deep under brakes into the turn number 19, Rehan Leonage. He came from a long way back, but managed to get the car stopped. And in these sim racing setups, confidence under brakes is one of the defining factors, because unlike in an actual real-life race car, you don't get a lot of feeling through the brake pedal, so it can be quite hard to judge just how hard and how late you can brake without locking up and losing control.
Absolutely. You find that if you've got that confidence under your brake foot. Oh, we just see one of the cars. That's Luke Mitchison. He's fired across there. You can see the damage in the front of that car. I touched on that a little bit earlier about how crucial it is to keep the front of these cars clear. But look at that. That left front is really piled in. That'd be giving him some grief, but looks like he shot across the grass there. Don't know if he out-braked himself or got a little helping hand. As we come into the braking zone here, does he just go in a little bit too deep? Oh, he just can't get it turned in. So struggling with that car, shot across the grass and rejoined safely.
Yeah, and if you cut the circuit at that section generally, you will get a slowdown penalty, which will be administered through the iRacing software. It can detect if you shortcut the track and gain an advantage. Here's Marcello Rivera, currently running in 7th position, having one of his most competitive performances of the season is Marcello. He's currently 32nd in the championship after some tough results in the opening 2 rounds, but showing a pretty competitive turn of speed tonight and currently sitting well inside the top 10.
Yeah, absolutely. And a driver with good pace too. You know, he's a very good driver, and to see him now up inside the top 10 this week, that's terrific. Looks like he's just settling himself down nicely. Nothing too crazy at the moment, and I think what he's doing at the moment is probably he'll be in touch with his team. They'll be thinking about when they know they're talking about pit stops, so whether he finds himself in a situation where he's got to sort of push on, where he knows he's not going to have to save any tyres, that'll come soon enough, but at the moment he's sitting pretty.
So the top 9 cars have all broken away by almost 3 seconds from Madison Down, who sits in position 10. And the problem for Madison at the moment is that he's not close enough to get any benefit from the slipstream. So as hard as he is trying at the moment, he's not really catching up to the group of cars ahead. He's probably going to need to use some pit strategy and get himself up into the lead pack.
Very Madison Down-like, isn't it? You know, we're normally so used to seeing him up the front, but at the end of the day, what he needs to do is just sort of think about how this race may play out. You know, we don't rule out safety cars too. I mean, you just never know around this racetrack about what can happen. You know, we've seen like last round at Phillip Island, someone loses a motor just randomly, and then at the end of the day, that brings out a safety car and changes these races on its head. So he's not out of it. He's just making himself that little bit tough there at the moment, where he finds himself nearly 7 seconds off the lead.
Well, both of our rounds so far have had one appearance from the Logitech G Aston Martin GT4 safety car. So we saw it on track at Sebring, and Phillip Island in the second race of the weekend, we saw it coming out onto the circuit after Adam Briggs blew an engine. So it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight. And of course, if it does appear, it could well turn out to have an impact on pit strategy as well. So James Scott has got ahead of Ethan Grigalt. That's the other point that we should make here. So James Scott back up into second position. So the two teammates, car number 1 for Jared Gilsell, car number 088 for James Scott, both driving for the Synergy Sim Racing team, back up to the positions that they started the race in, positions 1 and 2.
Looks like they're fairly comfortable with their cars too as we go to a Logitech G car replay. So down the straight, look at him just trying to break that toe. And this is where he's going to get the job done. Moves up the inside. Ethan Goodgalt just says, yep, you know what? Off you go. Just gives him a fair bit of space and says, you know what? We can fight that on a little bit later.
Smart driving there from Ethan Grigalt, and possibly that's what Brady Myers should have done a bit earlier on in the race, rather than turning down aggressively when there was a car up the inside. As we look at Brad Rattu. Oh, contact here at turn number 19.
Yep.
Jamie Mike has been involved in that one. And so too has Harrison Dengate and Tom Freer as well.
He's almost having a night to forget, isn't he, Freer? Like, it's looked like he was trying to make a dive up the inside, whether he got it a little bit too late. He's the third car back there. Dive in under brakes. Oh, does he lock it up? Just the car turns in, bang. Yeah, that's just... that's a tricky punt.
And poor Tom Freer now all the way down to position number 42. And it's interesting that Tom Freer had a really good opening round at Sebring and was well inside the top 10 in the championship, but then a tough outing at Phillip Island, and it looks like another pretty terrible night tonight. Hearing as well that Jordan Ross is out of the race altogether due to a mechanical failure, so Jordan Ross will be a DNF this evening, unfortunately. Hearing as well from the Evolution Racing team manager Brenton O'Brien that Marcello Rivera was on pole position here at Spa last year, so he does have pretty good form at this track.
Yeah, it's not a bad racetrack to have format too. This is such a special joint, and really, when you put a lap together around here, it really does put a smile on your face. It's so rewarding. There's so many fast corners here, and you know what, I'm surprised too that now, just looking at this lead pack, how they're starting to stretch out a little bit. It looks like, you know, Burton's now finding himself sort of 2.7 seconds back. That's that top 5 just gapping themselves a little bit. So Phil Sell looks like he's ready to run, and we were hearing that Grigalt just let Scott through. I think he was just trying to pace himself and just see what these guys have got in front of him.
Well, it could be a bit of a fuel strategy play as well, because let's not forget that there are 2 compulsory pit stops to be completed here, and if you can sit in the slipstream and save a bit of fuel, that is potentially going to save you a bit of time in the pits later on, because you won't have to put as much fuel in. It's a more efficient way of driving than being out in the lead. So a bit of fuel saving in these early stages of the race could pay dividends later on.
Absolutely, and that's what I love about these longer races too. It really brings the team aspect into it and how some strategy might play out. Like you said, saving fuel, that's massive when it comes to pit stops. So, you know, I like that. I reckon that a few people would be doing that, especially if they found themselves a little bit further back in qualifying.
Here's Josh Muggleton. He had to start the race at the rear of the grid for a penalty for an infringement in qualifying at the previous round at Phillip Island, but he's making pretty decent progress through the field. Here's Josh. He's made up 14 spots in the opening 7 laps, currently sits in P27.
We just got an update. We missed it that looks like race controls looked at that incident with Phil Sell and Myers, and Phil Sell's going to receive a 15-second penalty for that one. So we missed that.
Wow.
Well, yeah, so that maybe be a part of why Phil Sell's decided to do the bolt now.
That's why I'm a commentator and not in race control doing driving standards, because I honestly thought that Brady Myers should have been giving him more room there. I suppose at the end of the day, we're only commentating based on what we can see on the broadcast, whereas the team in race control probably have some more angles to look at. For those of you who've just joined us here, this is the incident we're referring to, and this is the onboard angle from Jared Phil Sell. That's marginal. That's really marginal, I have to say. What do you think, Sandman?
I'm going to stick with being a commentator, I think, for this one. Like we said, race control's got all the different angles that they've got to look at. They've weighted up, they've put their measures in place, and they've deemed that it's just alongside there. They've deemed that Jared's got himself a penalty. So that may be why we're seeing that little bit of increase in speed. You know, he's now really pushing on. I think they're trying to open up a bit of a gap, but Greg Galt has sort of paid attention to that, and he's just sticking with them in that slipstream. We saw that he let Scott pass, and I guess they're just trying to make hay while the sun shines, because you just don't know what's going to happen. We talked about the joys of maybe a safety car. That could throw a spanner in the works, because 15 seconds around here, yes, we can see the field starting to spread out, but if you get a safety car, it bunches all the field back up again, and that could really change it and make Jared's day go from bad to worse.
I think Galt's in a good spot here, because he is going to be saving fuel, sitting in position 3, and being able to benefit from the tow from the cars ahead.
Absolutely.
So the 15-second penalty, I believe that will be served in the pit stop as well.
Right, there you go. So, yes, I guess Jared would be looking at a point where he could serve that penalty, and then once he's already got it, then possibly a safety car just to help him gather that field up again. There's so many things that can play out for this, but for now, Jared just needs to put it behind him, just eyes forward and push on.
It's his second penalty in 2 rounds for Jared Filsell, because we saw that he was penalised in the first of the Phillip Island races as well. Here is Brady Myers, who's on the comeback trail after that controversial incident with Jared Filsell earlier on in the race. Brady Myers currently sitting in 15th position, so he's made up around 6 spots from where he landed on the track after that excursion due to the contact with Jared Filsell, and he's currently battling it out with Wayne Burke. And he's got Brenton Hobson just ahead as well.
Yeah, I think for Myers, he sort of needs to do the same thing, just eyes forward now. You can't change the past, and what he knows, he's got good pace, and if he can just eyes forward and see how this race plays out, like we said, there's still pit stops to play out. It's only lap 9, so still 30 laps to go around Spa. So, his night can obviously improve so much more. He just needs to put it behind him.
Still pretty tight a bit further back in the pack. So Sebastian Varndell sitting back in 30th position at the moment. He's got Michael Taliancic just ahead. He's got Kenneth Latter just behind. Josh Muggleton's in this battle group as well. So too Rehan Lenage a little bit further up the road, and Kurt Stenberg as well. It's one of the things that we do love about this Logitech G Pro Invitational A Series is that no matter where you are in the field, chances are you're going to be involved in a battle with someone, and it's going to be pretty intense.
Absolutely. We've often joked that we don't have enough cameras sometimes or eyes on the race just to catch all the action, because there's so much good racing. And that's part and parcel because of the drivers that we've got in our series. It was a qualifying series to get into this, and then now all these guys really taking it to each other, and the racing, exactly like you said, is thick and fast no matter where you are on the grid. It's really good to watch.
Turning our attention back to the laid pack, Jared Filsell, James Scott at the moment just sitting in the slipstream. James Scott probably knows that Jared Filsell has that penalty coming his way, and therefore there's no point making an overly risky passing manoeuvre.
I think what he was trying to do too, which is a good strategy, is get right up behind Filsell and almost bump draft him, almost Talladega style, just down that straight, because that is handy. That'll give you just that extra couple of kilometres an hour for Filsell. When he feels that little bit of a bump, he'll notice it, and that's probably good for the both of them, where they can try and sort of start to stretch this gap over the rest of the field.
It's through this section here where Filsell does, it's able to extend the margin a little bit, but then when they get into the straighter sections of the circuit, when the cars behind are able to slipstream, that's where they rail him back in.
Always handy as a race driver too, when you know you've got a teammate behind you. I mean, I always found that, not that I've done a lot of racing, with these guys are way more competitive than I'll ever be, but when you've got a teammate behind you, it really does take the pressure off you a little bit. You two can work together and play this race out exactly like you like it to.
And Luke Mitchison is going to get a drive-through penalty for that contact with Tom Freer that we saw a bit earlier on. That was the incident where Freer got turned around at turn number 19. So Luke Mitchison has been adjudicated to have been the at-fault party for that one, so he'll take a tour of pit lane. Not too far away, I don't think, from our first round of pit stops. Probably only 2 or 3 laps before we start seeing people diving for the pits.
Look at the diving. I saw Rivera just jump on the brakes there. That thing really pulled up nicely. I thought he was going to dart into the back there of O'Shea. Well, he's having a look now. He's thinking about it. Oh, he's going to get alongside. A little bit of a lock back touch. Oh, he's gone round. Oh, and he's been collected too. Oh, that wasn't ideal. I just said, he just touched on Rivera, how he got in under brakes there, but unfortunately they did make a little bit of contact, and that'll keep the stewards busy yet again.
Interesting to see how the stewards read that one. Rivera obviously went for a dive down the inside of Dylan O'Shea. The question about whether or not he was far enough down the inside at the point where contact was made.
Oh, he's alongside. He was, very much alongside.
But was he under control? Will be the question that I would ask there. And because he was locked up. That's the... Yeah, you have to, obviously you need to get far enough down the inside, but you have to, the car has to be under control as well. And just getting clipped on the way through as well. Dylan Rudd having to take evasive action to the outside of the road.
Ooh, yeah, that just adds insult to injury, doesn't it? You don't think the lucky stars have got a commentator's hat on tonight, because, yeah, the guys in race control have definitely got their work cut out for them in the steward's office.
Dylan Rudd was very lucky there. He could have come out a lot worse from that one, but what it has allowed is Madison Down to now close to within half a second of Dylan Rudd. So Madison Down now in a spot where he is able to start benefiting from the slipstream of the cars in front. And it's actually a fair bit of damage to the front right of Dylan Rudd's car there as well. It's worse than I thought it was. So he's going to be battling with that for the rest of the race.
Yeah, that's not ideal, especially so early on. I mean, you don't want that sort of damage anyway around here, but yeah, that's definitely going to make things a little bit tricky. You can see just how much damage there is to that right front of that Commodore. So, you know, hopefully he can still push on, make the most of tonight, but yeah, not ideal.
And really for him, just a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time as well. He was very much the innocent victim in that incident that we saw at the Source hairpin on the previous lap. And Brady Myers into the pit, so we are starting to see pit strategies coming into play. So Myers in at the end of lap number 11 for what will be the first pit stop of the race.
I like this because it finds that he's going to have himself some nice clear air too. Once he gets his stop done, he'll be able to just eyes forward and push on. It's just whether I'm assuming they're all going to go for tyres here, because just because of how long this racetrack is, these tyres will really start to go away from him. And the advantage that we'll have in that clear air, as we see Madison Down get the job done on Rudd, we touched on a bit that damage. It was probably how it was easy enough for Down. But yeah, these guys will make the most of those fresh tyres, especially in clear air, and hopefully Myers can start to push on and make up a couple of more positions.
He'll need to make the most of the undercut, because the downside of pitting early is that a bit later on in the race you will find yourself on tyres that are not quite as fresh as some of the other drivers that you're battling against.
It's almost out of character, isn't it, when we see Madison Down back as far as he is? You know, I say he's back as far as he is 8th. I mean, you know, we're so used to seeing him up the front, and then, you know, uncharacteristically, we saw that mistake at Phillip Island. There's no way I would have picked that. You know, he looked like he was just taking it easy. He was in cruise control, just got that right rear onto the grass and then fired off at the last turn at Phillip Island, and that turned his night upside down. And then to see him back there, what was he, 12th or 13th at the start of this race? That sort of makes things a little bit tricky. And then, of course, that front pack have got away from him, and we touched on just how crucial this draft is. But thankfully, he's been able to peel off another one, and now it's just eyes forward for him.
He hasn't quite had the pace tonight, I don't think. His best lap, 2 minutes 18.8. It's about half a second away from the best laps that we'd seen tonight. James Scott and also Jake Burton both getting down to 2 minutes 18.3 lap time. So they've been the pace setters as far as ultimate lap speed goes this evening. And drive-through penalty. This time it's car number 84 that's going to get called. So that's Sebastian Flock. And that's for contact a bit earlier on in the race, as we see Marcello Rivera being passed this time by Luke Rosella, who moves up into 6th position.
Good looking paint scheme there for Rosella as well, too. A little bit of a fan of that myself.
He's another driver who's shown good pace in particularly the opening round at Sebring, but hasn't quite got any results on the board yet so far this season, but having a solid run so far tonight.
That's the beauty of this series. You know, if you find yourself in good stead, especially early on in this championship, it really bodes well for the rest of the series. I mean, I know there's sometimes where drivers will have favourite tracks and they'll outperform probably where they normally are, but you know, I think at the moment it looks like he's quite comfortable, and what he needs to do is just sort of not worry about too much about how this race is playing out. It's still very early days here on lap 13.
So we're now a third of the way into the race, so we have reached the theoretical lap when we would expect a lot of drivers to come in for their first round of pit stops, given that we are now a third of the way through the race. And these top three, they've all been able to break away from 4th place. Josh Anderson by about a second and a half.
Wonder if there's talks of with TTR, maybe a little bit of talk with maybe Anderson dropping back to help Burton with a little bit of draft. I'm not sure, but you know, at the end of the day, they know that they've got pit stops coming up, and that could really change a lot of things.
Another penalty coming up for car 033. 5-second penalty for contact at turn number 1. That's Damien Johnston, so penalty for Johnston. All about officials in race control certainly being kept busy tonight with a couple of the incidents that we've seen. Still yet to hear any decision on the incident that we saw with Marcello Rivera and Dylan Rudd. So they're probably still assessing all of the on-board angles and explanations for that one at the moment.
Are we surprised to see Phil Sell going as long as he is at the moment? Lap 14 now. You know, I guess we were probably sort of thinking maybe around the lap 13 mark, or you know, I guess that they're enjoying that clear air, and they're not short of pace either. I guess that's probably what they've got to capitalise on at the moment. They know they're not stuck around anyone. They've got good pace on their side, and you know, they'll start thinking about how their car actually feels, and probably, you know, I guess decide to push on as much as they can. But I would have thought possibly with that penalty he's got looming over him, would he want to just get that over and done with in the off chance that we possibly get a safety car later on?
Yeah, that's what I probably would have thought as well. So, to be honest, I am a bit surprised that more people haven't come into the pits yet. There's still only 6 people have completed their first compulsory pit stops so far. So, the next few laps you would think is going to get quite busy with people visiting pit lane. Riding on board with Wayne Burke at the moment, and he's currently sitting in 16th position, just up behind Richard Hampstead, who we saw spinning at turn number 1 earlier on when he was caught on the wrong side with 3 wide altercation at the first corner.
A little bit awkward too, wasn't it? Because Madison Down was the one that was on the inside that was sort of making that 3 wide, and you know, I guess there was you know, never any intention for all that to happen, but it's just maybe it was just a bit of racing action there. But it's never good when 2 teammates come together, whether they intentionally had a red hot go or not. But it's always tricky when 3 cars head into a corner. This gap's now out to about just over 3 seconds now. So these guys are looking fairly racy here at the moment. And that we talked about a little bit earlier how with Ethan Guigault, who was just decided to let Scott go, and I think he's just happy to tag along there at the moment. But now starting to open that gap. I think what could happen here, because you look at Anderson, we've got Burton who's trying to tag on the back of him. If he can just get a little bit of that slipstream, that'll just start to pull him up a little bit closer, and that'll help come around pit stops.
Exactly right. Interesting once again that people have chosen not to come into the pits this time around. So Anderson and Burton, they've both got fairly clear track at the moment. We'll go back to the battle between Rosella and Rivera. Madison Downs another 3 seconds behind Marcello Rivera at the moment. And Dylan Rudd's just behind him with Joe Stewart rounding out the top 10 at this stage.
That was an interesting onboard there. You can see Rivera, how much pace he had just there. And he just decided to crack the throttle and just decided to sit back in there. So I reckon that was good, smart driving by him. Obviously, he's found himself in a little bit of action already so far. But he's just happy, I think, at the moment and quite content to sit there. But as I say that, these guys aren't. These guys are racing, trying to get a little bit of an advantage there off the back of Stenberg. A little bit of bump drafting too. I touched on that too. It's a little bit of Talladega style. Nice and clean. They've managed to get through there. I tell you what, I do love Stenny's wheel action. He's right up on the wheel, making the most out of every lap. He knows he's got his hands full. He's looking at his rearview mirror, and he's got plenty of action happening around him.
He's been kept pretty busy, isn't he, Kurt Stenberg? Love the setup of Kurt Stenberg's sim as well. And some of the gear there in the background. Looks like quite the man cave setup for Kurt Stenberg, which is absolutely fantastic. We just saw there as well that there's going to be a penalty for Todd Freer for contact with Jamie Dyke a bit earlier in the race. So 15-second penalty for Todd Freer, who's already back in 31st position. So that's going to just rub some salt into the wound for what's been a pretty tough night for him so far.
I'm always intrigued watching these driver shots just to see how each driver takes on these races. You know, they're obviously looking around, tilting the head. I do the sort of tilting the head to get the tongue out a little bit just to try and get the car right in nice and tight with the corners. But I love how he's up on the wheel. He's racing hard, and he's now thinking about what he's got to do now. He knows he's got a couple of hungry cars behind him. Does he start thinking about a pit stop? Oh, look, now it's going to go around to the outside. He's got his work cut out for him. Doesn't want to go out too wide. Now he's on the outside, and he fires off into pit lane.
Yeah, so Kurt Stenberg deciding to get out of that battle. I don't blame him either. It's probably better off coming into the pits and getting out of trouble than continuing on and potentially getting involved in an incident, because things were starting to get pretty feisty there.
Perfect shot with just how much that draft does. And then again, O'Shea just rolls out of it. These guys just happy to stay line astern at this stage. Ritter Hamstead, he's just towing these guys along. Here we are, lap 16 of 39. So no one out of this top group has decided to fire off into the lane just yet. Saving these pit stops for a little bit later on in the race.
It's amazing, isn't it? I really would have thought that we would have seen a lot more pit stops by now, but obviously everybody's decided that the optimum strategy is to run a long first stint and then 2 shorter stints to the checkered flag. I suppose the advantage is potentially that you're going to be on fresher tyres with a lighter fuel load later on, so that's what they're all working towards.
I wonder if there's a lot of chatter about them banking on a safety car. You know, we talk about the unknowns of a safety car. That obviously does mix things up. So are they playing that strategy in the back of their mind? I mean, who knows?
And there we go. So the officials have made their decision, and Marcello Rivera is going to get a penalty. 15 seconds for the contact that we saw between him and Dylan O'Shea at turn number 1. And I think what the officials wouldn't have liked about that one was the fact that Rivera was locked up, and he probably used O'Shea as a brake to help him slow down and get around turn number 1. Here's another look at the incident heading into the La Source hairpin. And he got down the inside, but you'll just say that he had the wheels locked, so he sort of backed it in there to the corner, and then unfortunately Dylan Rudd getting caught up as collateral damage in that accident on the exit of turn 1, as well as we do now have some pit stops. So Marcello Rivera, Brenton Hobson and Jack Boyd all coming in at the end of lap number 15.
Good to see. I like it. I'm glad there's a couple of people. that they're actually rolling the dice and having a crack at it, because, you know, you don't want to just do exactly what everyone's doing around you, because then you're not going to make any gains. It's good to see that some people are rolling the dice, and it'd be interesting to see sort of what sort of pace they've got over the next couple of laps compared to our leaders.
And they will get a bit of an undercut benefit as well. And Rivera's stop's obviously going to be longer because he has to serve out that time penalty under safety car, so it's going to drop him some spots. But for Brenton Hobson and Jack Boyd, it's got the potential to put them on fresh tyres and allow them to leapfrog some positions. So Brady Myers now the highest placed car that's done a pit stop, and he's in position 24 at the moment. He took his stop very early, lap number 11.
Hey, what it makes me think about what the future lies for our racing series. You know, all the talk about the weather and the rain being introduced into the series. I mean that is going to be a real challenge for him, isn't it? Like, if we were at this point of the race, you know, and the weather starts rolling in, I mean, you know, we can see there's a little bit dark and overcast in some parts of the racetrack here, but we know there's no threat of rain. But can you imagine in the future where these guys have to weigh up whether they think the weather's going to settle in and whether they start thinking about making stops for wet tyres? I mean, I'm really excited about that being part of this championship.
I can't wait either. And I especially can't wait for the race where it starts off wet, then it dries out, and then it rains again, just to confuse everyone.
Absolutely. And it's nice when you're not a driver, isn't it? When we're in the commentary box.
It could be that we get some of those races where it's all about just making sure that you're on the right tyres at the right time, or even taking the gamble. Staying out there on slicks, as we see. This is Rick Kuznetsov into the pits. Matthew Bong, Robert Gibbs, Adam Briggs, Blake Warboys all coming down pit lane as well. So we are now starting to see the pit strategies shake out. But our race leaders content to take advantage of the clear track that they've got at the moment, and they're going to run longer into this first stint.
I'm not a betting man, but I wouldn't have bet up towards near lap 20 that these guys wouldn't have made their pit stop yet. I mean, obviously every team's got a different feel, and they've got an understanding of their car and what their tyre life is like. And I guess it changes where you are throughout the race too. If you find yourself up the front where you've got clear air, or if you find yourself down the back and you're stuck in traffic, obviously that does play a part in it. But to be at lap 18 and our race leaders haven't made their stop yet, I find it really interesting.
So we're almost halfway into the race and still yet to have the first pit stops being undertaken by most of our leading contenders. Here is Richard Hampstead, so he's now up to 11th spot by virtue of some of the drivers that he was racing with taking their stops. At the moment, he's having to fight pretty hard to keep Wayne Burke at bay.
One thing that I start to think about now that we're almost at sort of the lap 20 mark, I mean, we're coming up to that halfway mark of the race where these drivers still have to make 2 stops. Do they put on tyres, and does someone roll that dice? Because this is a really long pit lane when you're got the pit lane speed limiter on. So is someone possibly going to roll the dice where they're just going to get up on jack stands, put a splash of fuel in and just take off again? I mean, we didn't expect that coming into it. We really thought that people would take advantage of fresh tyres. But as this race goes on, that makes me start to think, is that what they're thinking about?
Well, that could be the strategy. So it could be that you get to the halfway stage of the race, and rather than making 2 pit stops for tyres, you just take the one, and then your other pit stop is a very short splash of fuel, put the car up on jack stands for 1 second, and away you go again. So it could be that that's the optimal strategy tonight.
It's funny, isn't it? Because we spoke about that a little bit, because obviously it happened at Phillip Island, and when we were talking off air, we were like, no, they probably won't do it. You know, tyres are pretty good around here. You know, that's always nice to have a fresh set of boots on. But yeah, as the race goes on, I just think because of the length of pit lane, it's such a long pit lane, you probably are better off maybe just trying that. It's really going to be interesting to see where we are. Lap 19 now. So, and Phil Sell's still looking pretty pacey out there.
I can tell you that everybody who has stopped so far has taken on tyres. Andrew Gilliam, Richard Hampstead, Brian Borg and Josh Muggleton all currently in pit lane. The fastest pit stop that we've seen so far has been Brady Myers, 16.8 seconds. Was was his pit stop. And that was obviously because he stopped early. It wouldn't have taken that much fuel to return the car to full.
It's interesting for the point now for these teams and drivers. I mean, they'll all be starting to think about strategy. I guess they'll be smashing the calculator and the thing will be smoking by the end of it, because they're just trying to work out whether it's a benefit for them to stay out this little bit longer or decide to pit in. So a little bit of racing action here. Hampstead got his hands full. Looks like he's got the job done there.
That was a move on Tom Freer, who's a bit out of sequence because he hasn't taken his pit stop yet. So Hampstead coming out of the pits on fresh tyres and has made it out ahead of these two Fluoro Synergy Sim Racing cars of Brenton Hobson and Jack Boyd.
Interesting to see what sort of times they do now, because these guys have obviously made their pit stop. They've got themselves a little bit of clear air. So now I wonder so last time round Jared was sort of a 2:18. So be interesting to see what these guys now on for this fresh rubber clear air, what sort of pace they've got, and are they going to make some sort of undercut. So last time round Hobson was a 2:19, Boyd a 2:18.3. So he's actually faster than Phil Sell last time round.
Yeah, Jack Boyd with the fastest lap of the race overall last time around. So on fresh tyres with a lighter fuel load, taking advantage as Jake Burton comes in. So one of our main front-running contenders comes in. Dylan Rudd is in now as well. Job Stewart, Wayne Burke and Dylan O'Shea all coming down pit lane.
The thing that I find that interesting with Burton, that he didn't pit with his teammate, because him and Anderson, I think, had found themselves close together by the time that he decided to dart in pit lane. So he's decided to peel off by himself, and Anderson is still on track. So that raises a little bit of an eyebrow with me. I thought they might have tried to pit together and sort of work together as far as the draft, but they've decided to go their separate ways. Oh, it looks like Jared's just struggling a little bit. I don't know if he was just trying a different line there, but just didn't look quite like, I think, yeah, he's looking a little bit taily there. I wonder if he'll start thinking about a pit stop this time round.
Yeah, the rear tyres look like they're pretty second-hand on that car at the moment. So given that we are now on lap number 20, you would have to say that these guys are going to come in and definitely change tyres this time around. They've made it to the halfway point of the race. They've done a good job of maintaining a pretty consistent pace. I mean, last time around for Jared Philsell was a 2-minute 18.7. It's only 0.2 of a second slower than his best lap, 2 minutes 18.5. So it's not like he's losing too much speed, but we do know that there is a gain on new tyres, and that'll be a bit of the concern for these drivers if they stay out too long.
And of course, to take into consideration that Jared's got that penalty too that's hanging over his head. So as much as it's been a good race for Phil Sell, it's been good racing from Scott and Greg Galt just to sort of tag themselves in behind him. So I think we now look at pit lane entry now. Are they going to think about darting in? Yes, they are. It just looked like Jared's car just wasn't behaving, so all three of them have jumped on the opportunity to pit together. And of course, it was a lap ago that we saw that Burton had made his pit stop. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of gain that Burton makes on these guys now that they're in the pit lane.
In fact, our top 6 cars are all in at this stage. So our entire lead packers in here is Jake Burton pushing on hard.
Look how far back he is.
You're right, be interesting to see where he comes out relative to those drivers who've just stopped. Jake Maloney, incidentally, has gone through to take the lead, so he is yet to take his stop. The only other driver yet to stop at this point is Tom Freer.
So this great outlook, Burton, he's gonna be the leader here. So Phil Sell still in, he's at pit exit now. It's going to be very close, and this has been a good gain for Burton. Look how much he's closed up on these guys. Just pitting, that was just 1 lap difference. So Burton got very good pace here. He's going to be, just at the back of that. Just gives Phil Sell just that little bit of a tough. So Scott has just got in front of Phil Sell.
Well, Phil Sell didn't serve his penalty in that stop, so that's the other interesting thing there. So we know that he's got a 15-second penalty, but he clearly didn't serve it during that pit stop. So the time penalty still to come then for Jared Filsell. That's an interesting decision. I would have thought that he would have wanted to get out of the way at the earliest opportunity, but maybe he's decided that it's better off racing in the lead pack for as long as he can and serving it at the second pit stop so that at least he's got track position for as long as possible. I just would have thought that by taking it sooner, you've got more time to recover lost places.
Yeah, I'm not sure. He may be trying to play the teammate game too, where he might just say, right, I'm here to sort of try and push Scott on and use him as a bit of a draft, and these guys may just sort of bump draft and see if they can open up a little bit of a gap. But I don't know what the ruling is as far as when he has to serve it. I guess if at the moment, I guess it's just that he has to serve it inside the race, and if he decides to leave it a little bit later, then so be it. But I don't know, I was sort of under the impression that he may have had to serve it for the first stop, but I'll leave that up to the stewards. I'm not sure about that one.
Well, what this has done is it's actually condensed the lead pack up quite significantly, because there are some quite big gaps forming, but now there's less than a second separating the cars from James Scott, who becomes the effective race leader, all the way down to Andrew Gilliam, who will effectively be in position 7. Madison Down has now got himself into that lead pack as well. So I was saying that he needed a bit of pit strategy to get himself up in amongst it, and it certainly worked out for Madison Down, because he's a lot closer to the leaders than he was for the pit stops.
I think the one guy that'll be fairly chuffed with the way that's all played out is Burton, because he's really found himself right in the thick of it now on the tail end of Scott and Filsell. So we saw that he pitted. It was just 1 lap difference, but man, the gap that he able to close up, I think at one point it was probably about 3 seconds or maybe more from the leading pack before pit stop. So to make that advantage on it, that's been really good. But now he's just finding himself, just needs to get himself in a bit of a rhythm and see how the rest of this race plays out. Obviously they've got that other pit stop that they still need to make, but that is certainly a different kettle of fish. Whether they decide to do just fuel, whether they decide to take tyres, whether we see a safety car, who knows?
So Jake Maloney has come in for his pit stop and rejoined in 21st position, so we now have a cleansed field. The entire field has now taken their first pit stop, so James Scott is your race leader. You have Jared Filsell, Jake Burton sitting in 3rd position at the moment, ahead of Ethan Grigalt. Then it's Josh Anderson, Madison Down, Andrew Gilliam, Luke Rosell and Job Stewart, and Dylan Rudd rounding out the top 10.
We're hearing from race control that Burton had a 6-second stop faster. So that sort of that sort of gives us, it was 5 seconds faster. I'm sorry. Yeah. So that's obviously what's helped him. You can see the stop there, 22.3, Filsell 27.4, Scott with a 26.6. So that's obviously played a huge part. So I was starting to scratch my head. I thought, man, that was a massive gain if that was just fresh tyres in 1 lap. So that answers a lot of questions.
So the question for me then is, why was the pit stop so much faster? Was it because he took on less fuel? And if that's the case, then presumably he might have to take on a bit more fuel than the others in the second pit stop, which means that he'll probably lose a bit of time compared to his opposition come the second round of pit stops.
Yeah, and we touched on that some of the drivers probably will be at a point where they would have been saving fuel through that race. It's a lot of fuel to save, though. I mean, you know, who knows? I mean, he's obviously has gone for the shorter fuel stop. Things will change when obviously he has to make that second pit stop. But again, so many things to play out for lap 23 of 39. We just sort of have to wait and see.
Ethan Grigalt looking pretty racy and up the inside into the LaSource hairpin on Jake Burton, who gives him racing room. So Ethan Grigalt back up into 3rd position.
Yeah, I think he needed to get that job done, because if Burton found himself just slipping back from Scott and Filsell, they were now starting to get themselves up the road. So I think Grigalt saw that happening in front, and he figured he had to get past Burton, because if he was stuck behind him too much longer, this was going to hurt. But look at this. This is the bump drafting that I was talking about. It's exactly what Filsell was doing. He's just decided to play the teammate role and try to get Scott and Filsell out and open up that gap as much as they can. Grig saw that, and Grigalt decided to make that move on Burton. Very smart heads-up driving.
And Josh Anderson with the fastest lap of the race that time through at a 2 minutes 17.4. So now that the drivers have got fresh tyres on, the lap times are considerably faster than they were earlier in the race, and it's Josh Anderson in position 5 who's showing some good pace at the moment as we turn our attention back to the battle going on a bit further back in the pack between Jake Maloney, Dylan O'Shea, and also Adam Griggs part of that one as well.
Oh, move up the inside. These guys giving each other a little bit of room. Thank goodness. We've seen how easy it is to come unstuck there, but those guys give each other plenty of room on exit there. Thankfully, they can all now push on for another lap. It's got good mid-corner speed though, hasn't he, Freeman? Like Thomas Freeman, as you can see the way that car turned in, looks very good on turn in. Looks like he's still ready to hustle the back, but what he needs to do now is just sort of stay in touch. The car looks good, but whether it's enough to stay in touch with these two in front of him, with Veld and Hinz, we'll have to just wait and see.
So the two Synergy Sim Racing teammates continuing to work together to try and build the gap over Ethan Grigol, and they have managed to extend the margin out to 1.4 seconds. So good teamwork so far from these two drivers. And I reckon they've probably got just enough of a buffer over Ethan Grigol that he's not going to be able to slipstream them down the Kemmel Straight.
Always interesting as a driver too. When you know you've got those tyres on, they're fresh and you're ready to have a red hot go, you know you've got to push to try and catch up to the guys in front of you, but you don't want to burn what you've got too, because you know you've still got plenty of racing laps under their belt to complete, and they want to be competitive at the end. There's no point at burning up your tyres and then having nothing to race with in the last 5 or 10 laps.
And given how close everybody stops to the halfway point, it's going to be interesting to see if people do choose to take tyres at the second pit stop. I suggest that a lot of them probably won't.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen tonight, and when we crossed to when Phil Sell and Scott were pitting, and then we crossed that shot back to Burton, you saw how far back he was. So, you know, it is such a long pit lane, and I think it may benefit them where half of them will probably start to think about just that quick splash.
One driver having a pretty good run so far tonight, Job Stewart. He's up in 9th position, having one of his best outings of the season so far. Here's Job Stewart, and he's a driver who's doing some impressive things in real life car racing this year. He's currently leading the Dunlop Super 3 Series.
Mate, how terrific is that? And I mean, mate, when you're doing this as a hobby, and you're in your own home and enjoying racing, and then to get it to do it in the real world and on the weekends as part of the Super 3 category, that's pretty awesome. I'm very, very jealous, and I wish all the best for Job throughout the season, but that's pretty cool.
He's driving as part of the Pursuit Sim Racing team in the Logitech G Pro Invitational Series. Don't think it'll be too much longer before we see Job Stewart on the grid in some pretty cool real life races as well, because he's certainly demonstrated he's got the talent. Don't think we'll be too much further away from seeing the second round of pit stops taking place. One of the things I thought that we might have seen some drivers maybe do back-to-back pit stops where they did both their pit stops in successive laps, given how close they were to the halfway stage of the race, but looks like nobody's gone for that option.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good feather to keep in their cap. I mean, if you've got a pit stop and you know you still have to make another one, the chances of a safety car, you just never know. So it's always probably nice to have that in your back pocket, because if you do that double stop and then the race goes on, and then sort of 10, 15 laps later, the other drivers haven't made their stop and they put on fresh tyres, you might find yourself a little bit of a sitting duck. But it obviously is something that the teams do think about at time to time. But at the moment, it looks like everyone's fairly happy to split those stops up.
Which means it's probably going to be a very short final stint. We are getting quite close now to lap number 26, which is the 2/3 of the way through the race marker. But given that it's only 5 or 6 laps since a lot of drivers stopped, I think they'll probably go a bit deeper into the race, and I reckon it might be lap 30 or even later before we see the final round of pit stops.
How do you go playing yourself as a team strategist, mate? Do you envy those jobs or what?
No, I can't say that I envy the team strategy jobs, particularly the teams that have got multiple cars as well.
These guys still doing a good job, aren't they? That margin is still 1.5, 1.6 seconds. Gridgold still trying to push on, trying to get a sniff of that draft. If he can just latch onto that, it'll be certainly a game changer for him just to get onto the back of this, because we know now what the strategy is for Phil Cell. He's just pushing. He's doing a great job of it at the moment too. And as Scott, he'd be driving along, and that's pretty handy to have someone of the likes of Jared Phil Cell behind you pushing him along.
With positions as they are at the moment, there will be another new championship leader after this round. James Scott would leapfrog Jake Burton and would move to the top of the standings. Could be that we get our 4th different race winner tonight, and also our 3rd different championship leader after 3 rounds, which would just go to show how unpredictable this series has been so far.
Ooh,
late pit stop coming up here for Robert Gibbs and Marcello Rivera. That was last minute, wasn't it, for Robert Gibbs having to drive it across the pit apron there to make it into the lane.
He's like, oh, he's making a pit stop? Yeah, I'll go and do one too.
So Rivera, one of the first drivers in for service this time around. I think we'll probably see Brady Myers in fairly soon as well, remembering that he was one of the very, very first drivers to take his first pit stop back on lap 11.
Change of position there, so Maloney's now crept up to 16th position. Again, making the most of that draft. Oh, no, he got sideways though, holy smoke. Got that left rear up on the ripple strip and had to work for it, really yanking on that steering wheel.
Well, remember, Jake Maloney was the last driver to take his first pit stop, so in theory he should have fresher tyres than everybody else on the racetrack at the moment.
This is where there's a car up on the curb. Probably not too bad here. I think when he gets on the next ripple strip, that's when the car just got a little bit of a slide as he turns in. This is it. Have a look at that. Oh, hold on to that. That was heart and mouth stuff. Nice little snap of oversteer. He's held onto it and pushed on.
He had to feed in some serious opposite lock there to keep the car on the black stuff, but managed to gather it up.
Makes things pretty exciting, doesn't it, Lockie, when you talk about a possible change in the championship lead with the way that Scott's running. I mean, you know, you touched on the different drivers and the winners that we've had, and now a change in the championship lead again for round number 3, quite possibly. So it really makes for an interesting season. And if this is only round 3, I just can't wait to see how the rest of the season plays out.
Still a bit to play out in this race, though, so we're only talking on what we can see on track at the moment. Of course, there's still plenty of potential for the positions to shuffle around a bit before we get to the end of this race. Still got 14 laps remaining.
Good goal. He's now got that down to a 1.2, so he's now really in a position where he's starting to make the most of that draft. And the problem is for these guys is that he's bringing Burton and Anderson along with him too, and Down finds himself in 6th position. So he's a driver that I'd sort of lost touch on, because we spoke about how he was back himself and it's sort of back in 12th position down the grid, and now to find himself around closer to his teammates in 6th position, I think he'd be fairly happy with that, the way this race started.
It's shaping up to be an interesting finish, isn't it, with these top 6 cars heading into the final round of pit stops. And it will be that last cycle of pit stops that's really going to tell the story in terms of how this race will play out. We know that Jared Phil Cell still has a 15-second penalty hanging over his head, so you would expect that would take him out of the equation in the last round of pit stops, but it's still going to leave James Scott, Ethan Griggolt, Jake Burton, Josh Anderson and Madison Down fighting it out for the win.
Love the look of visor cam. Just shows you Jared Phil Cell at work. how he's working the steering wheel, how he's trying to make the most of staying in behind his teammate and pushing the draft. I mean, this he will close up a little bit, but it's that main straight that he really sucks right up to it. So you can see just what speed he gets here, but he's got to be careful. You don't want to put the nose to the bumper, especially into this turn, because you do that to someone, they're going to fire off into the weeds very, very quickly.
Big braking zone here as well, heading into turn number 19, and it's one of the prime overtaking opportunities on this Spa-Francorchamps circuit. There's actually, in these supercars, there are quite a lot of overtaking spots. Turn number 1, the Source hairpin, we've seen a few moves through there today.
Oh.
You see fuel cell gathering James Scott right up under brakes, but it's important to get a good exit from the Source as well, because it's quite a long run downhill before you get into Eau Rouge. Hard to get side by side through here in touring cars, but again, important to get a nice smooth run through this section so that we're well positioned in the slipstream onto Kemmel Straight, as we see. And he's going to pull out this time, so here we go. Jared Fuel Cell goes back to the front and gets it done easily by the time they get to Lecombe.
Now, I think that change of strategy was because they saw how much Greg Galt has closed right up to him now. So maybe Jared's thinking that he's probably got a little bit more pace in it. So what he wants to do is try and do the bolt and have Scott tag onto the back of him. I think that's what they want to do, because they can see just how much Greg Galt has closed up in the last couple of laps.
Yeah, there's probably also the factor of if Jared Fuel Cell's got a 15-second penalty, he needs to try and get as far ahead of the field as he can to minimise the number of spots that he will lose once he takes that penalty.
Yeah, I think regardless of where... Oh, a car off. Maloney. We just touched on a little bit before how he was sideways and all crossed up with that snap of oversteer. I don't know if he had a helping hand, but that was into that braking zone. No, it's out of the pits. Oh, no. Cold tyres, has it got away from him?
It has indeed. My goodness gracious me. So he's actually spun it on pit exit and whacked the wall for good measure. And then I think...
Looked like it got one through tyres, maybe. I don't know.
He's flicked it out to the other side of the track to rejoin the circuit. That was a weird one.
This is going to be tricky with this wall here. Did he get up on two wheels? Yeah, he did. Oh, God. That's a really odd incident.
It's pretty embarrassing, actually, for Jake Maloney. That's not something that you normally see coming out of the pits here at Spa, but I suppose it just goes to show the danger of gassing it up too hard on cold tyres.
Now, speaking of gassing up, is that what Fuel Cell's doing here? I think it is. He's just trying to open up that margin and try to pull Scott along with him. He probably feels he's got a little bit more pace at the moment. Last time round, he was a good few tenths up, but obviously that was when he made that position and that move on Scott. So that does affect things a little bit. But Greg Galt now sort of within striking range. But then look at this back here, the TTR cars are now starting to gang up. They know that they get a chance of possibly a sniff of this draft. And we see all the pit stops starting to play out. It's all starting to happen here with 10 laps to go.
Yeah, so Brady Myers, Dylan Rudd, Andrew Gilliam, Luke Rosella, Richard Hampstead, all in the pits. So big flurry of pit stops taking place now. In the TTR cars, Josh Anderson has caught Jake Burhan, and Madison Down is coming to play as well. So it's now a three-way TTR battle for positions 4, 5 and 6. We'll need to sort this out pretty quickly, because if one of these cars is going to be a contender for the race win, they can't afford to lose any time fighting one another.
Absolutely, and now they're all starting to think about what they're going to do. They still have one more pit stop to make too, so do they do that just quick splash, get it up on the air jacks and get on with it? But obviously if they start to think about taking tyres at this point of the race, it may cost them as the race goes on, because we are running out of laps.
So out of all of the cars that have taken their second pit stop, Luke Rosella is the highest placed of those cars, and he is in 8th position. Now that was a quick stop for Luke Rosella as well, only 17 seconds for him. So Luke Rosella strategically in a pretty good spot at the moment. He is 38.3 seconds off the lead of the motor race, and he's got nice clear track around him. So Luke Rosella, a driver who could spring himself up into the mix once this final round of pit stops for our race leaders plays out.
It's one of the cool things, isn't it, when you've got all these teams and different strategies and the way they think that they can go about their race. This is what the one things that I really do enjoy about these long races, because so many different things can happen. So many people have different ideas about how they can make their race work, and you just don't know what's gonna happen and the way all this plays out. Certainly with, see now, Madison Down, he's fired into pit lane. So he's the first of that TTR group. So he's decided to fire. Oh, whoa, went sideways there. Now Rudd's going to make the move up the inside. Oh, it's nice and close for these guys side by side. Oh, a little bit rough under the dirt. These guys have got it all going on.
It's a tricky one for Dylan Rudd because he's just made his pit stop, but he's battling against cars that are yet to take their final pit stop. So at the moment, Dylan Rudd trying to make up spots. He's battling with Andrew Gilliam, who has also done a pit stop. So this is for net race position. They'll go side by side. You've got
three wide.
The TR cars in there as well. Oh,
what a move! Hampstead, how impressive was that? Decided to make it 3 wide, jumped in there under brakes and got the job done.
That was 2 spots. He actually gained 2 spots on a couple of cars that had already pitted. So he managed to overtake both Dylan Rudd and Andrew Gilliam in one fell swoop.
That was awesome. I know what Hampstead's doing after this race. He's going to go back and watch that replay and watch that over and over again. That was pretty cool.
So Madison Down, having taken his stop, we'll come back to that because I want to have a look at this replay. This was a cool move for Richard Hampstead. So he sees Gilliam and Rudd battling it out in front of him.
Oh, look at
That's
that.
right, I'll just overtake both of them.
Oh, that was good heads-up driving too. They gave each other plenty of room. They could see how that was all playing out, and that was just a really good driving from everyone involved, but nice move up the inside from Hampstead.
What a move. That's move of the race so far from Richard Hampstead. That was a breathtaker. But the point that I was going to make is that Madison Down, having taken his final pit stop, he's come out
behind Rosella,
almost 3 seconds behind Luke Rosella. So Rosella, by my reckoning, he's going to be right in the mix for a podium finish here once this final round of pit stops plays out.
This is getting tasty, isn't it? Lap 30 of 39, and these guys still up the front. They need to make their pit stop. So the top 5 drivers, they still have got one more stop to go. And this is really going to start to tighten up towards the end. Impressive. Burton's fired into pit lane.
So we're watching Luke Rosella. Could he be a driver who's slipped under all of our noses and is going to come from the clouds to take a podium finish? Well, based on the strategies and the positions at the moment, you'd have to say that it's a distinct possibility. And this is a critical stop coming up here for Jake Burton.
Now, we touched on earlier that Burton did have a shorter stop first time round. So will this hurt him or not? We'll just see how it all plays out. You can see he's still up on the jacks. Rosella's now making his way down the straight. He's coming into the final turn. This is where pit exit is. Burton's now at pit exit. And he's managed to get out in front. So at the moment, it's Jake Burton who's our race leader, but right behind him, Rosella. That's been a good strategy from Rosella.
And a good stop from Jake Burton as well. A couple of very, very quick pit stops for Jake Burton in the number 8 car. So he's right in the mix now as well. So it all comes down to these final pit stops for Phil Sell, Gott, Grigott and Addison to determine how this race is going to play out.
Indication there, so 19.8 second stop there for Burton. Rosella 17 seconds, but Down had to do a 24, nearly 25 second stop. So yeah, that's where it sort of hurt Down a little bit, but obviously the top 3 or top 4 still have to make their pit stop. And of course, don't forget, Phil Sell still has a penalty to serve as well.
It's going to be a very short final stint for these top 4 drivers. They'll have at the most 8 laps to do in their final stint. Oh, look at this. Robert Gibbs is a bit further back in the pack. Rick Kuznetsov getting elbowed out of the way.
Look at that! What a move! Oh, these guys aren't mucking about. How good was that? A dive up the inside. Plenty of room given. That was terrific.
That was Matthew Bowler in the number 12 car. Another driver taking the opportunity to pull off a double overtaking manoeuvre. What do you call a double overtaking manoeuvre? I feel like it needs some sort of cool name.
I reckon I call it pretty impressive.
Let's put our thinking caps on for that one before the next round.
So here we go, Greg Galt, he's in the lane. Anderson's in the lane as well. So Scott and Philsell still out on track. These guys know that they have to get their pit stop over and done with because they'll be looking backwards to see where Burton and Rosella are now. They know they've got some sort of indication of how close they are. You can see Burton now, he's coming into the final chicane. This is where pit entry is. So for that to work out for Greg Galt and Anderson, they need to be off the jacks fairly quickly. And Greg Galt he's off his jacks and he's out of pit, he's heading towards pit exit. So Greg Galt is your leader now.
So Greg Galt makes it out ahead of Burton, who makes it out ahead of Anderson, who just manages to get ahead of Luke Rosella.
I think this is looking good for Greg Galt. Remember we spoke about before, he was quite content to sit in behind, but he actually let Scott go at one stage, and he was quite content just to sit there with Philsell and Scott. Maybe he was there and decided, you know what, I'm just going to sit here and save a ton of fuel, and that's probably where it's going to come down to pit stops now. So he'd be fairly happy with his strategy. He'd be looking now to see how long it takes for Scott to make his pit stop. This could decide the winner of this race, and what a strategy it would be if that was the case where Greg Galt was saving fuel.
It was a very quick pit stop for Ethan Greg Galt, only 16 seconds. So I think you're right there, Sandman, and I think the fuel that Greg Galt saved earlier in the race could now prove to be very valuable heading into this final stint because he's got out with a handy margin. It's almost 5 seconds that he's got in hand over Jake Burton.
Yeah, that's impressive stuff, isn't it? You wouldn't have picked it before the pit stops. You know, we weren't quite sure who was going to have to stop for what length, but for having to have that margin over Burton, he'd be fairly chuffed with that. And now it's all eyes forward on Scott.
Still pretty feisty towards the tail end of the top 10, though. So there is Andrew Gilliam up behind Richard Hampstead, who we saw pulling off that brilliant overtaking manoeuvre at the final chicane a couple of laps to go. And our leaders are in. Jared Philsell and James Scott both deciding to pit at the end of lap number 32.
That's crucial now to see where Greg Galt is. We look at the track map, we can see he's coming through that fast right-hander. He's coming into the braking zone. This is the sharp right-left where pit entry is. So now it's eyes on Scott to see exactly where he is. Now, nice and clean for Greg Galt. Scott's still on the jacks. He hasn't dropped yet. Oh, this is going to be so close. Looks like Greg Galt's done it. He looks like me. He's going to take the lead. And he has. So Greg Galt, Ethan Greg Galt moves into overall P1. Fantastic drive. Looks like that saving fuel strategy has paid off big time for him.
Indeed it is. So there he is, Ethan Greg Galt, the leader of the race. And Jared Philsell still has not served that penalty. So what happens now? Presumably it gets added onto his time at the end of the race, I suppose.
Yeah, interesting. I'll leave that with the stewards, but yeah, not sure. But at the moment, it's Greg Galt. And how good was that? You know, we said that he was quite content just to sit behind Philsell and Scott, and that's exactly what he was doing. He was just sitting there saving fuel. So he'd be actually pumped with the way this has played out. Now he just needs to keep smart head and just think about at the end of the day, he can try and push on and try to keep Philsell behind him.
The margin is 1.4 seconds, and we've got 7 laps remaining. So, the big question now, does Ethan Greg Galt have the pace to keep these two Synergy sim racing cars at bay? The other interesting thing as well is I talked about potentially a change in championship lead. Well, it's not quite so clear-cut anymore because there's only one position separating James Scott from Jake Burton, so I'm not quite sure. I don't think that James Scott's quite going to get enough points to leapfrog ahead of Jake Burton in the point standings, but it's going to be extremely close between those two come the end of this round.
Makes it exciting, doesn't it? You know, when the championship battle starts to tighten up at the top, I mean, that just makes for some great racing in as we head into the next round. But yeah, Burton would be pretty happy with that. You know, qualifying wasn't all the best for him, but to find himself in P4, I think at this stage he'd be fairly happy with that.
It's Kurt Stenberg, he's given us a lot of action shots tonight. bit further back in the pack, currently sitting in position number 25, just ahead of Sebastian Flock. He's got Thomas Hinz just ahead at the moment.
Get in there, Stanny. Turn it in. Good job, mate. Love it. He's got the lean in. He's got the steering wheel going. It's great. It's so good to watch. I reckon we're really lucky to have driver cams as part of the series. It's really great to see how these drivers go about it. They really get up on the wheel, and we've always said, oh, look at CC. He just pulls the steering wheel now. He takes a little bit of a breath now. He knows he can take it a bit easy. Look in his mirror. He can see who's around him. But now it's starting to be thinking about getting back on the wheel as we start to get into that braking zone.
It's on here, so Jared Filsell has made up a lot of time on Ethan Grigol, and we've now got a battle for the lead. And this is an interesting one because we believe that Jared Filsell still has a 15-second penalty coming his way, but at the moment it is a battle for the lead on at the racetrack. So if you're Ethan Grigol, how hard do you defend here?
Well, at the end of the day, I guess, maybe the mindset of Filsell is that he's going to take it up to the stewards and he may protest that penalty. I don't know. Look, at the end of the day, a win's a win. Grigol still wants to just finish in front of him because then he doesn't have to worry about anything else post-race. He can just eyes forward, and if he can hold off Filsell, then he knows he doesn't have to worry about it. He'll know that he'll have the win in the bag, but he's definitely going to have his work cut out for him. Filsell's been quick all night, and now he's really starting to put the pressure on the back of Grigol.
He's got pace to burn at the moment, Jared Filsell, so we're going to call this as a contest for the race lead at the moment with 5 1/4 laps remaining.
Oh, look at the pace he's got. You can see just the draft too. I think he might just sort of sit here. Oh, no, he's going to make that move up the inside. Oh, it's going to be nice and close. Wow. Holding your breath through here, guys. You don't want to make any contact. Oh, they've given each other plenty of room. It's good, hard racing. And now it's into the tight section where pit lane is. Does Jared decide to go around the outside, swap to the inside? He's going to try and hold strong. And now he's got the inside line for this turn.
What a move from Jared Filsell. So they went side by side through Blanchimont, and then he was able to toughen out around the outside through turn number 19. Does Grigol fight back down the inside into the La Source hairpin? No, thinks better of it. Tucks back in behind Jared Filsell, who's a little bit wide at the exit. What Grigol needs to do now is tuck into the draft of Jared Filsell, stay there through Eau Rouge, and try and get the toe down the Kemmel straight.
I think he's got two now. He's got to look in his mirror because he can see Scott's right behind him too. So no doubt he's got to look eyes forward, but he knows he's going to get pressure from behind. And Scott's going to have a nice little toe here as well. So these guys really starting to mix it. Jared's gone to the outside. Grigol's going to go to the inside. No way, they're not going to go 3 wide. This is for the lead of the race here at Spa. Filsell holds on. Grigol in second, Scott in third.
Jared Filsell's got his foot down now, and he's been able to cover off that challenge back from Ethan Grigol. So Filsell goes back to the front. It's all happening a little bit further back in the pack as well. Check this out. Wayne Burke, Brady Myers, Dylan Rudd, they're going to go 3 wide into Lacombe.
Oh, this didn't work out great last time that Myers had a run like this, but he's held on. A nice bounce back from Myers. He's in P9 now.
And Wayne Burke just managing to keep Dylan Rudd at bay. Brenton Hobson, Andrew Gilliam, Jack Boyd, Richard Hampstead. They're all in the mix here as well.
Oh. Little bit of nose-to-tail contact, that's okay. That's just braille for I'm a little bit faster and I wouldn't mind getting past you. So these guys, they can see some of the battle scars that these guys have got towards the end of the race, but it's really closing up. How's this going to play out up front? It's still Filsell. Grigol in second, Scott in third. Filsell starting to open up that little bit of a margin.
He's pushing on hard, Jared Filsell, and it's Grigol who's now under pressure from James Scott, who's been fast all night as well. So the fuel saving works for Grigol, but coming into this final stint, he doesn't quite seem to have the pace of the 2 Synergy Sim racing cars. And James Scott would dearly love to get ahead of him and not only make it a 1-2 finish provisionally for the Synergy Sim racing team, but also potentially get himself into a position where he can wrestle away championship lead from Jake Burton, who has been passed by his teammate Josh Anderson. So there's been a change in position there for the Trans-Tasman Racing teammates as well.
this is really stepping up, isn't it, towards the end? We know that Spa can really turn it on, but man, oh man, when these guys get nice and close, the draft is really key. And who would have thought it'd play such a part with half a second covering the top three at the moment, but plenty of racing throughout the back. Here we go. Greg Galt's got his hands full. Scott's going to try to go around the outside. He's going to grab the toe off his teammate in front of him, Phil Sell. Is he going to have enough or not? He's going to hold on. Oh, a little bit of a touch in the braking zone. Oh, Greg Galt's locked it up. They're giving each other side-by-side room, but Greg Galt will slip back to third.
They made contact in the braking zone there, saw the cob, and in the end it was James Scott that was able to sweep around the outside and take second place away from Ethan Greg Galt. This got very hairy in the braking zone as we take a look at the replay. So, he went in really deep under brakes there, Ethan Greg Galt, and I don't reckon he was fully in control of the car there, and in the end he decided just to bail out of that one and let James Scott go.
How good's the battle between these three? It's been really good, but look at Phil Sell. He's now opened up. But these guys, these aren't given an inch. Look at them still side by side through here. Still plenty to play for, regardless of where they are. This is back for 12th position. And now look, Hampstead's there. He's in the thick of it too. Oh, contact on the exit. Holding on. Don't tell me Hampstead's going to go for another 3-wide pass. He's already done it once tonight. He thinks about it, but thinks better of it.
We still get at least one spot on Andrew Gilliam, though. So Gilliam was hung out wide there by Jack Boyd, and Hampstead saw the opportunity to grab a spot while the door was open, and once again he gets ahead of Andrew Gilliam. It's been a world championship for 13th place in this race tonight. Unbelievable.
Love it. I love it. And that's what makes this series so special, is that, we said it before, regardless of where you are in the field, there's always good racing up and down.
So Brady Myers has moved up ahead of Dylan Rudd and Wayne Burke. So Brady Myers up to 9th position. He'll probably run out of time to catch up to Job Stewart, the next car up the road, in 8th, but it's still been a pretty good recovery drive for Brady Myers, who was all the way back to 21st after the contact with Jared Filsell earlier in the race.
That's impressive, isn't it? Because he did that all by himself. There was no help with safety cars or anything else. It was just pure pace and strategy. And what he's done is to be inside the top 10. And I think when he found himself off with that incident while leading the race, I think he probably thought his night was over. Yes, it's not a win, but to be inside the top 10, that's a hell of a good bounce back. So well done, Brady.
Not over yet for him, though, because he's got a bit of pressure coming from behind from Dylan Rudd, who will be right in the slipstream down the Kennel Straight. Brady Myers moving to the inside. Oh, that's a little bit dicey. That's actually, the officials will take a pretty dim view of that. Brady Myers changed his line more than once there. You're not allowed to wave left and right on the straight, and I think that was probably more than one change of direction, so he'll have to just be a little bit careful with that defensive driving there, Brady Myers.
Stenny's back in the thick of it. Now he's got his work cut out for him. You can see Freeman in front of him. Is he going to be close enough to grab somebody with that toe? Time for him to relax. I don't think he's close enough here, unfortunately, but still in the dying stages. It's still nice and close between these guys. That's McNamara.
Yeah, and Hayden Veld, so this is further back in positions 28 and 29. Having a good contest. Kurt Stenberg, the next car up the road. And Josh Anderson and Jake Burton continuing their battle for what is 4th position on the racetrack. It could end up being a contest for a podium position depending on what happens with Jared Filsell.
Yeah, so 2 laps to go. Filsell and Scott have now opened up that margin over Greg Galt now to 2.8 seconds. So I think it's now going to be decided between the teammates.
Could get some laps traffic coming into the equation here as well. As we say that Richard Hampstead has a 5-second penalty for the contact with Andrew Gilliam earlier in the race. It's a bit of a shame. We were enjoying those spectacular overtaking manoeuvres, but it turns out that one of them was not deemed to be fully legit, so 5-second penalty coming the way of Richard Hampstead.
Now, this plays an interesting part. Does Phil Sell just keep pushing on and take the win and then, talk about that penalty later on? Or does he give it to his teammate in Scott? I mean, I guess either way, I think Phil Sell would be keen to get the win, and I guess he'll just sort of play it out. And if the penalty still sticks, his teammate Scott will still get the win. But these guys, how's Dylan Rudd? Now trying to make the move around the outside. Myers has got his work cut out for him. Still 2 laps to go. Oh, a little bit of nose-to-tail contact just to let him know he's there. But looks like the Rudd's still got a fair bit more pace there.
Yeah, Rudd and also Wayne Burke both got pretty good pace in the closing stages of this race. So Brady Myers fought hard to get back up to 9th position, but he's probably had to use a lot of the car and a lot of the tyres to drag it back up through the field, and he might be a little bit vulnerable in the closing stages of this race.
There's no denying the pace of Jared Filsell, is there? I mean, he's quick. He was quick at Phillip Island. He's quick again here at Spa. And it's good to see Jared back to the front because, it was a little bit unlike him. When we saw him missing from Sebring, it was like, where's Jared Filsell, a reigning champion? He was so dominant last year. And then to come into this year, we really expected him to be up the front. But at Spa, he's really showing the pace. He showed it at Phillip Island. And I think now he's just got to be pretty chuffed with the way the car's behaving. One more lap to go for round number 3 here at Spa, but what an absolutely cracking race it's been between teammates Phil Sell and Scott.
Barney waving the white flag to let everybody know that it is the final lap. It's not a fait accompli for Jared Filsell just yet because he's only got a half a second margin over James Scott, but you would think that there would be some degree of team cooperation heading into this final lap. It's still not over further back in the pack as well. Still these little battles going on all the way up and down the field, including this contest between Jack Boyd, Richard Hampstead, who's got a penalty, Brenton Hobson and Dylan O'Shea.
Oh, Madison down.
So Luke Rosella and getting rounded up by Madison Down. So Madison Down up to 6th position. Hasn't quite had the pace tonight, has he, Madison Down? Qualified 12th. He's done an okay job to recover to 6th, but still not where we would normally expect him to be.
Oh,
and here we go. Still on. Brady Myers, Dylan Rudd around the outside. Oh, this is
Myers.
He's
going to
hold on. Side, though. Myers should hold on here. Oh, and Rudd gets forced out into the gravel trap, and Wayne Burke gets up the inside.
Yeah, he's going to make the move. Oh, it's close under brakes. Gave him some room there. Good heads up driving there for Myers. He's trying to hold on because he knows if he can keep the car there, he's got the inside for the next line. Side by side still. Burke's going to have to hold on. Oh, it's nice and close into the dying stages of this last lap.
What a race. And here, back up the inside, Dylan Rudd on Wayne Burke, but he'll outbrake himself and run wide. And Burke switches back to the inside as Andrew Gilliam now gets a penalty for contact with Brenton Hobson. So all of these penalties being handed out, they'll have to be issued to the drivers post-race. But what a performance it has been from the Synergy Sim Racing team, mates. They started off the front row of the grid. It wasn't all clean sailing. There was a controversial incident between Jared Filsell and Brady Myers early in the race, but he's fought back, and yes, it's a provisional result at the moment, but it is a provisional 1-2 finish for the Synergy Sim Racing team, with Jared Filsell taking the win ahead of James Scott and Ethan Grigon rounding out the podium in 3rd position.
Good stuff there from Anderson 4th, Burton 5th, and Madison Down. We said it was very uncharacteristic of Down to be back there, but I think if you had told him from his struggles earlier on that he'd finish in the top 6, I think he would have taken it. So, yeah, it was a dominant race for the Synergy Sim guys, wasn't it? They really had a good car and pretty much ran the race they wanted to, and their strategy worked out really well. And yeah, it was a great tussle. But obviously now we wait, and like you said, it was. It's now a talking point, I guess, whether these results will stand, but we'll leave that with the stewards. And but either way, it's been a heck of a race. Spa's been really good racing action.
Okay, so the news from race control, and this is important, is that Filsell is definitely being penalised. So the 15-second time penalty being added on to Jared Filsell's race time will drop him back to 8th position. So the penalty confirmed for Jared Filsell, which means that it's James Scott who will take the race win ahead of Ethan Griggold, and Josh Anderson will find himself on the podium. That will make it our 4th different race winner from the first 4 races of the 2013 Logitech G Pro Invitational League Series, and James Scott, by virtue of that victory, will also move into the championship lead.
What a cracking race. I mean, Spa really does a great job of putting on a good show. I mean, we saw some good racing all the way through the field. We saw a little bit of controversy, but hey, that's racing. And now it's eyes forward to round 4. What a cracking start to this championship we've had, for having all these different winners and our championship leaders. And it's just been so good to see. And really, really can't wait for round number 4.
So confirmation of the race results. Now remember, these are the provisional results, but it is the penalty for Jared Filsell of 15 seconds. So it'll be James Scott who will take your race victory ahead of Ethan Griggold. Josh Anderson will move up to 3rd position ahead of Jake Burton. Madison Down gets into the top 5 ahead of Luke Rosella and Job Stewart. Jared Filsell dropping down to the 8th position with the penalty. Brady Myers and Wayne Burke rounding out your top 10.
So pretty much what we expected, Lockie. I mean, these guys really put on a good show. What do you think? What do you think about tonight's racing?
I think obviously the power of the slipstream here at Spa meant that we saw plenty of overtaking, particularly at the end of the Kemmel Straight, with some great moves into the La Source hairpin and also into that final chicane as well.
Yeah, Hampstead will be pretty happy with that. He'll go back and watch those replays. It wasn't just Hampstead that was doing the 3-wide action. It was really good to see. These guys really put on a good show. And now it's time to sort of eyes forward and start thinking about round number 4. But we're going to see if we can get some of our drivers into the commentary box and get a word with them. But what an absolute cracking race, and good to see, although Jared got himself into a bit of strife, it's good to see a bit of return to form, because I was a bit worried about him after round 1. It was very unlike Jared not to be as strong as he was, but it's good to see him back up the front.
The frustrating thing for Jared Filsell, though, is that he's now been penalised twice in 2 rounds, because he copped a penalty at Phillip Island, which dropped him back in one of the races, and now here at Spa in this round, a penalty has cost him a race victory. So once again, he's definitely a title contender, but you'd have to say that he probably needs to just be keeping it a little bit cleaner and avoiding those penalties. Next round of the series, by the way, will be held at Road America on the 7th of June. It is now time, though, for our podium presentation here at Spa, and we'll start off with the driver who is going to be classified in 3rd place in the final podium standings, and that is Josh Anderson.
Josh, congratulations, mate. It's been an absolute cracker of a race for you. P3, tell us about your night.
Yeah, it was good to get a result. I've had a bit of a run of poor results, to be honest, and it knocks you around a bit. So I just wanted to make sure I drove it smart and didn't do anything silly just to get a result tonight. So I'm happy with that. It probably missed the mark a bit with the car. Didn't have speed to match the front guys, but those kind of races you just got to execute. So I think that's what we did tonight.
Lockie and I touched on at the start of the broadcast, it's a little bit strange. We obviously expected you to have such a stronger start to the season. Obviously, the first couple of rounds didn't go the way you would have liked, but to grab a podium tonight, that's pretty crucial for the championship.
Yeah, like I myself, I make way too many mistakes. So I've really been trying to work on that, and it affects your confidence, and it can get frustrating at times when you're not getting the results. So any time you can get a result is a boost, and that's it's a common story in car racing. So yeah, I'm pretty happy to get one on the board. Obviously, the first 2 rounds of this series have been terrible, which was not ideal. But you cop that, and it was mistakes on my end. So you cop that and you learn from it, and you try to go better next time. So and I'm really happy to get a result tonight.
It's a good thing you've got going in your favour too, is that you've got a strong team behind you with TTR. Obviously, they've got good pace. We've got Burton as your championship leader. It may change a little bit the way it plays out, but look, at the end of the day, you guys have got a good base and some good drivers, and you guys really worked well together. And we can see even though you go through the stats, you've got yourself, Jake Burton, Madison Down. Like, you guys have got good data to fall back on, and that's only going to make you stronger as the season goes on.
Yeah, that's it. Having such a such a wide array of drivers to pull from and learn from can only be a good thing. And like the great thing is we all get along well, and we all, we get on and practice and take it seriously, but at the same time it's fun. So yeah, I love being a part of the team. And obviously we would have liked to have a bit of a better result tonight overall, but still 4th, 5th, 6th for the team, or 3rd, 4th, 5th, for the team is certainly nothing to sniff at.
Before I let you go, Lockie, did you want to have a chat to Josh? Is there anything you want to speak to him about?
It looks like there was a lot of cooperation tonight, Josh, between you and particularly Jake Burton and Madison Down with the slipstreaming and what position you were in. Just talk us through how much of that was pre-planned.
Very little of it, to be honest. I was hoping in my first stint to stay with the leaders, and I made too many mistakes in the first stint. I drove pretty poorly, actually. The car was hard to drive. Like, I struggled with the car, but still, it was me. So Jake called me in like my tyres were cooked at the end of the stint. Jake called me, and then I thought, okay, well, Jake pitted a lap early, so I knew that if I was going to be behind him in the second stint, then he'd pit a lap earlier than I would, because he's obviously we took a similar amount of fuel, and then I would have fresher tyres, and I'd have a BB's toe in the last stint. So I was fine with where I was. There's not really much aero push or and the slipstream effect is really big in the game. So that changes the way you strategize the race. So I knew where I was at, but it wasn't particularly, we didn't talk about it beforehand. It's just, I always try to just let the race unfold. And, if you over plan everything, then you normally end up screwing it up. So, no, that certainly wasn't pre-planned. But obviously the way the nature of the track means that, working together, and, me and Jake weren't fighting each other. There were spots where he could have sent me and I could have sent him, but that's going to slow each other down. So, and like, we didn't even need to talk to each other. We both know we're here to get the best result for the team. So why are we going to slow each other up?
Good to say that you've got that common sense prevailing. So just finally, before we let you go, great to see you back on the podium, Josh. Who would you like to thank?
Yeah, I guess everybody at TTR. Like I said, it's been a bit of a rough start to my season so far. Made a lot of mistakes, and it knocks your confidence around a bit. So to have the team around me that are always boosting you up, not all the time, which is good, but like, they're always supportive, and that you can you feel valued in that situation. So that obviously helps your performance on track. And then obviously our sponsors, VRS, who help us with data, and that's invaluable for us. So thank you.
Congratulations, Josh Anderson, on your first podium finish of the season. Another driver scoring his first podium finish of season 2023 in second place for the Evolution Racing team, Ethan Griggold. Congratulations, Ethan. Really solid performance all night. Obviously did a great job with the fuel saving, and you've come away with a well-deserved podium finish.
Yeah, it's pretty nice to have pace for once again. So, put a bit more practice into this week and grab the setup that Cello took pole with last year. So we had a pretty good base to start with, and you pretty much never know when you head into things how it's going to turn out. But from the first lap in practice, we were looking pretty good. So yeah, it was a good race.
You were right in the mix with the lead pack all night. Pretty good battle between you and the two Synergy Sim Racing guys in that final stint.
Yeah, we're pushing them the whole way, but their car was a little bit better out of, say, turn 1 and up Eau Rouge, but ours was really good in the middle sector. So it was a sort of to and fro a bit. I knew Jared had a bit of a 15-second penalty at the end, so it was a race between me and James for the lead. But right at that end stop, I've come out with a decent gap, and then I've looked at my fuel, and it's for some reason said I needed to add 5 litres. So I've absolutely freaked out and fuel saved for the next 3 laps, which reduced the gap to nothing, and then it corrected itself and said my fuel was fine. So I'm a little bit dirty at that. It could have been a better race towards the end. And then when I had the contact with James, I only had one incident point left, so I just had to drive in the middle of the track everywhere, which is a shame, but no, it was awesome to come away with a podium result.
You said that it was good to have pace again tonight, but your pace in the opening couple of rounds hasn't been bad, and tonight's result is going to put you right in the mix in terms of the championship frontrunners. So how are you feeling for the upcoming rounds at Road America and Watkins Glen?
Yeah, so suppose with the previous rounds, I've sort of been in and around the top 10, but I hold myself to a pretty high standard, so most of the time that's not good enough. I'd like to be fighting at the front like this pretty much every round. But this car is very interesting to set up, and we're still learning a lot of things in it. And I'm just trying to find the time to actually get practice in the sim. So yeah, just looking forward to the next rounds. Hopefully we can get a fast car at pretty much every track and try and fight for the overall championship. But there's still a bit to go.
Sandman, any questions for Ethan?
Just the one that I thought you played pretty smart in the early stages of that race, where you looked like you were quite content just to sit behind Scott and Phil Sell. I think we sort of mentioned that you were probably at a point where you were saving fuel, and I think it was pretty smart driving just to sort of sit and just run with those guys for a little bit.
Yeah, I sort of saw them do that at the start of Sebring as well, the front pack. So I pretty much knew that even with Jared going absolutely full pace at the front, he wasn't going to get away. So the only thing you can really do is just bide your time and save a bit of fuel and hope to gain an advantage in the pit stop, which we did in the end. It was just a bit of a shame that the calculation kind of stuffed itself a little. But yeah, you just got to play a race like that smart. When it's 39 laps, you can't win it on lap 2 or 3. So you just got to be there at the end to fight for it.
Well, congratulations, mate. Before we let you go, you've got some pretty awesome sponsors on board. I think you should say good day to them.
I just thank all the boys over at ERT for putting in another cracking week of practice and setup work. And, of course, one of the best sponsors to have, Logitech G.
Congratulations, mate. A heck of a race and well-deserved, mate. Hopefully we talk to you again a little bit more throughout the season, or maybe even next round.
Cheers. Thanks, boys.
Congratulations. Yeah, congratulations to Ethan, our runner-up tonight, and taking the round win, his first race win of season 2023, and making it 4 different race winners from our first 4 races of the season for the Synergy Sim Racing team. James Scott, congratulations, James. Good race for you tonight, and obviously the 15-second penalty for your teammate elevating you to the race victory.
Yeah, the car was really good tonight. Obviously it's a luxury having someone like Jared being able to sort of drive behind and draft off the whole race. He definitely deserved the win tonight. He was by far the fastest car. I don't know if we've heard the end of his penalty or not yet. So, but even if he did get overturned, I'd be more than happy with P2.
How much was involved in terms of tactics with you and him slipstreaming each other and swapping and changing positions backwards and forwards? Because we saw a little bit of that tonight.
Yeah, no, we were in obviously Discord the whole race, just working together. Obviously trying to break the draft, which is no easy feat around here. I think we were able to break away. There was a bit of a gap between P3 and P4, sort of midway through that first stint, which sort of set up our race a fair bit more than obviously having a big draft train that goes down to like P20 or something. So yeah, no, that the first stint was really what set it up, and just working together as a team, great.
You've been right in the mix amongst the front runners in all 3 of the rounds that we've had so far, and based on tonight's results, provisionally, you are now the championship leader. So how does that make you feel moving ahead to the next couple of rounds over in the US?
Yeah, obviously it's great. It's better than being down the bottom, but it's only, what is it, round 3, so I'd be happier if it was around 10, but no, it's still a long way to go, so I'm not really thinking about any of that stuff yet.
You seem to have a car that works pretty well on a variety of different types of circuits, so that must give you a bit of confidence.
Yeah, for sure. We've been pretty strong at every round. Bit annoyed at Phillip Island. I probably could have got a slightly better result there than what I actually got. I was having a few technical issues, and a bit of the guy behind the wheel probably wasn't at his best either. So yeah, no, it's good to, we've been fast at a wide range of circuits, and just have to put that down to all the hard work everyone's done. Jared, Brody, all those guys. Car's always mega. So I just got to rock up on the night and do the job.
Got Sandman in the commentary box as well. Sandman, any questions for James?
Mate, I think you'd be fairly chuffed with the way the season's gone so far. Now, as you've been told, the series points leader at the moment, but not a bad couple of brains trust to have in your backyard with Phil Sell and Kostecki when helping out with car setups and racing and stuff like that. It's a pretty handy thing to have in the toolbox.
Sure. I think anyone up and down the pit lane would like that. I guess I'm just lucky enough to have it. They're both great blokes, really knowledgeable, obviously, with Brody's real life experience and Jared experience on the sim. So yeah, it just makes the racing side a whole lot easier with the strategy and the setup with those guys there.
A ripper start to the season, mate. Well done on tonight. And before we let you go, is there anyone you want to thank?
Yeah, obviously first up, those guys, Brody, Jared and Brady. In there spotting the whole night, made strategy a lot easier. I could just focus on my driving. The Watercraft Performance Centre, Parramatta, Isuzu, Too Easy Finance, Dr. Epoxy, Works Racing Components. Obviously you guys for the broadcast and the guys that make the series happen.
Good stuff, James. Congratulations on a fantastic night, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the track at the next round.
Thanks, guys.
There is James Scott, our provisional winner for round number 3 of the Logitech G Pro Invitational A Series, the Spa-Francorchamps circuit in Melbourne. And I have to say, Sandman, that when you've got Brody Kostecki, who happens to be the leader of the Real Life Supercars Championship, helping you out with car setup, that's going to stand you in pretty good stead.
It's not bad, is it? Now we can go and say, well, he's the leader of this series for the Logitech G series as well. So, yeah, it's good. And, we've seen Brody take part and, he's obviously real world commitments and he's racing and iRacing and he's obviously a value part of the team. And to have Jared Philsell there too, we saw the pace that he had tonight. Unfortunately got caught up in that incident. So, we'll let the stewards and everything else worry about that. But it's good to see Jared back up the front too, because like I said, we were a little bit worried about Sebring. It wasn't like him, but it's good to see that he's got some pace and that whole team is very strong and it sort of bodes for a very good championship.
Indeed it does, and still plenty more action to come this year in the Logitech G Pro Invitational A Series, with the next round coming up at Road America on the 7th of June. Thoroughly looking forward to that one. In fact, our next couple of rounds are both in the US at a couple of iconic circuits, Road America and then Watkins Glen for round number 5 on the 28th of June. Hope you've enjoyed all of the action from Spa tonight, though. It has been an absolute cracker. On behalf of Steve Sandman Clark and the entire team at Lucas Esports, including our production man behind the scenes, Luke Lucas himself, I'm Lockie Mansell. See you next time. Bye for now.